Hello, everybody. It's Friday night, and you know what that means. It is time for the new episode of Heavy Metallurgy. My name is Alan. I'm one of your co hosts. It's great to be back here and hang out with folks for another Friday night conversation. I am here, as almost always, with my stalwart co host, Marty. So, Marty, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. Hey, we got the band back together, so we've been together more than apart lately. So it's been good. It's been good.
Yes, Marty and I did a lot of episodes on different schedules throughout the fall, but I think our schedules have finally settled down a little bit, so things are moving forward. Now, something we need to touch base on right away at the beginning of this show is that this is the first Metallurgy episode that Marty and I are pre-recording. So if you're watching this live Friday night when it premieres, we're not going to be interacting with the chat the way we normally do because this has been recorded a couple of weeks in advance. Marty and I intend to be in the chat when this premieres on Friday night. So we'll still be there. We'll still be commenting, talking to you. If anything, we'll probably be more involved in the chat than we are because we're not trying to do this live and converse in the chat box at the same time. But yes, for those who usually tune in and watch live when the show first comes out, this is a pre-recorded episode. We're doing this because we had an opportunity to bring on a really great guest from Sweden, but Sweden's 6 hours ahead of Marty and I. So very difficult for a lot of folks in Sweden and other parts of Europe to be live. So we're like, hey, we'll just set up a new time to record when it's convenient for our guest, and we'll roll it out that way. If this format works out pretty good, it'll give us a tool where we can bring on more European guests in the future. There's a lot of folks we've always wanted to have on the show, but we can't expect everyone to stay up until 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning, which is the start time for them when Heavy Metallurgy comes out. So we're going to test this out and see how it goes. But thank you to everybody who is tuning in. Marty and I should be right there in the chat box at this point, joking around with you, commenting on all the cool stuff that you bring up, and we're looking forward to trying this out. Marty, anything else you'd like to announce before we get our guests out here?
No, nothing. Hopefully, just doing the recordings every once in a while, it's going to open us up to more guests from Europe.
That's the idea.
As much as I like being live on a Friday night, I think it's going to be important to widen our guests. Pick a guest.
So. Exactly. The live shows are really fun. We'll still be doing lots of those, but sometimes there are people out there who are just like, would love to be a guest, but I got to crash by 1 a.m. I can't be getting ready for a show to start. So we will hopefully open some doors to bring more of those folks on in the future. One last comment before we bring out our guests. Marty's internet has been a little glitchy today. So if he periodically sort of disappears for a few minutes, he may just have to hop back on. He's done a little troubleshooting. We may have it fixed, but don't panic if Marty disappears. He'll get back as quick as he can.
Yep.
Without further ado, we've got two great guests to bring out. The first is a returning guest. He's been with us for several episodes and is always fantastic. And that is going to be DaN from the Corroseum. So,
welcome back, DaN. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Yeah, cool to be back, and cool to be back on this very subject, actually, which is very literally close to home.
Very much so.
Because of our esteemed guests, because we had to do a part 2. I was actually a bit worried when you mentioned it, Alan, that we were doing a part 2. I was thinking, but I brought up so many great stuff. So is there even anything left to talk about? But it turned out that there is actually more than 10, 15, 20 Swedish records worth talking about.
Indeed so. Yes, for sure. Yes, we're covering Swedish Metal Part 2 tonight. And, DaN, myself, and Aaron, the Metal Theologian, did a great stream on this a couple of months ago. If you haven't checked that out, please do so. But when that episode aired, a particular person commented on it, was really... I enjoyed the episode and, expressed interest, like, I wish I could have been part of this. And so I thought, I bet we could make that happen. And so Marty and I have been working at it. And so for Swedish Metal Part 2, we have someone making their first appearance on the Corroseum. It is Janne Stark. who's been involved in Overdrive, a lot of other bands, and is also the author of the Swedish hard rock and heavy metal encyclopedias. So, Janne, thank you so much for taking time to join us on the show.
Thanks for having me. It was, I watched the other show and I really enjoyed it, and I felt that there were some things that needed to be added. So I'm really happy to be part of this, and
Yeah, and we appreciate you taking the fact that you were a big part of that scene and can shed extra light and give us a new perspective on some things. That's absolutely fantastic. We were really excited that you contacted us and that we were able to get things to work out this way. So Janne, would you like to tell folks, some may not be as familiar with your background, a little bit about how you got into the scene, what your involvement's been with Swedish metal over the years?
Well. I was born. Let's start there. No, I was
came out headbanging, right?
No, I actually born in '63, so I'm old, but started playing guitar quite early on actually, and had my first band was a band actually called TNT before the Norwegian ones. And we did some demo tapes and stuff, and it kind of evolved into Paradise, where we did one 7-inch single, and was recorded in 1979. And the other half or parts of that band became Turbo, which later became Mercy. So there's a kind of a connection there as well. And then we formed Overdrive in 1980. Did a couple of albums and an EP, and then Attack.
Yep, the first one, Battle Attack. Yep.
Then we had a band called Locomotive Breath. Did a couple of albums with that, and I've done some albums with a project called Mountain of Power. I've done 5 albums with that, which is kind of covers of more or less obscure early 70s hard rock bands like Stray Dog, Captain Beyond, and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I've done 2 albums with a project called Bandolier Kings, which is a tribute to Budgie, one of my old favorite bands as well. And I've done some other. I have a band called Constancia, which is, we call it the style melogressive hard rock. It's a bit melodic, a bit progressive, and a little bit aggressive. And we released 4 albums with that project, and did 3 albums with Neil Merriweather, kind of 70s hard rock, and I'm also now playing in a Thin Lizzy tribute band as well. So, and 1996, I did my first encyclopedia of Swedish hard rock, the first one. Cool.
I have to ask, as extensive as a job as this is, how does one say, I'm going to do this? And was there a point midway through the process you're like, why am I doing this? Too much.
There has been many points like that.
Yeah.
I usually say, when people ask me what drives you to do it, I say it's probably borderline craziness. Actually, the funny thing is that when I started doing the first book was there was I don't know if you remember, there was an English encyclopedia called the International Encyclopedia of Hard Rock and Heavy Metal. Mm-hmm. When I was looking through that, I found 5 Swedish bands. Overdrive was like one of them, and I was quite early on. I was a collector of Swedish hard rock, and a friend of mine, Phantom Lennart Larsson, used to have a magazine called Backstage, and he was also a collector of Swedish stuff. And I started tape trading back in '83, I think, 83, 84, and we traded tapes and we traded records and stuff. And I've always been very anal when it comes to my record collecting. So I actually, when I started buying records, I had a book where I wrote every record that I bought. I wrote the title, the band, the members, each song. I drew the logo, and I I wrote in where I bought it, when I bought it, how much I paid for it. And I did that until I had about 800 records. Still have those books. And then computers came around. So I started like typing them into the computer. And then when Phantom and I were talking about Swedish Band, he said, could you send me a list of all the Swedish records that you have? Maybe I can see what I'm missing, and we can, well, and when I did it in Excel, and I wrote the band, the title, the format. It was like a CD or vinyl or whatever. The country, which country the band was from, year, and label. And then I could easily sort out all the Swedish stuff. And I did that, and I sent it to Lennart. And then I figured, well, now that I have a list of all my Swedish records, so I mean, I could quite easily like type in the information about the bands, like members, that kind of stuff. And I started talking to Dave Constable, who he had a shop in London called Sounds, and then he had a Mega Rock in Sweden. And I told him about the idea, and he said, great, if you do that, I will pay for the printing. Then I started, like, this was back in 1994, 95, pre-internet. So there was a lot of phone calls. And I got in touch with Roger Holegård, who was the singer of Neon Rose. And he said, I'm working for a publishing company that's specializes in music books, so we would actually be really interested in this project. So we made a deal, and then David got some exclusive rights to export the book instead. So Premium Publishing kind of took over the project, and they paid my phone bills.
Nice.
So there was back then there was a lot of calling, like local record shops, local clubs, calling bands to ask about other bands, and try to find out if they released anything, or it was like vinyl or official release, or just a demo tape or whatever. So that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, it had to be a huge undertaking because the level of detail in the books, is really fantastic with catalog numbers and all that stuff. But was it really? I'm guessing it was very hard to track some of that down for at least chunks of the catalog. Did you already have most of it? Were labels pretty helpful with that, or was it like pulling teeth to get a lot of the information you needed?
It was both, actually, because in the first book it was kind of hard to find all the catalog numbers and everything, because I mean I try to get all the because I want this book to be for the collectors as well, so they can find all the different pressings and that kind of stuff. For the first book, it was really hard because you couldn't really find the catalog numbers and that kind of information in magazines and in ads and that kind of stuff. So I had to find people who had the actual record, or if I had it myself, or ask the labels. And that was, I mean, I remember one evening my wife came up, and I was sitting on the phone with some band, and she went down, came back an hour later, and I was still on the phone, and she came back like a while later, and I was still on the phone, and she just said, can't you just hang up so I can get a divorce? 2 hours later, I went downstairs, and she'd fallen asleep in front of the TV. So I woke her up and said, why do you always have to sleep? I want to talk to you.
Where do I sign the papers?
I've been there, done that.
Yeah, then when I did when the second book came out, then there was more like internet, so that it was a bit easier to find stuff then, and also to find bands had started to get like homepages or websites up, and it was easier to find information online. And actually, for the third book, it was actually sometimes it was even too much information, because there was like contradictions, and sometimes one member had written the bio on one page and another member on another page, and they were like, "Is this actually the same band?" I even had one member call me and said, "Oh, the information in the book is wrong, but I talked to your guitar player. Yeah, he doesn't know shit." So yeah, there's that.
Wow.
Yep. That can become an issue with such things.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, the
I wa-
books. Go ahead, Dan.
No, I want to put in actually the from an outsider's perspective of when the first book came out in what's 96, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was 24 back then. I just want to express you cannot overestimate the impact of when the first book came out, because I think every hard rocker and metalhead in Sweden were either in the book or had several friends who were. So one reason for everyone buying this was to find their own band or find their friends' bands.
Mhm.
And I think the first book had a lot to do with the Swedish metal sort of becoming a collector niche. And I think early, this was like second half of the 90s. Heavy metal was, it wasn't the resurgent yet, but people started to really become curious about old Swedish metal. And this book was the reason that people started really diving into the old Swedish metal scene. And a lot of people who, I mean, basic metalheads who, grew up with Maiden, Priest, and Metallica and Slayer or whatever, started looking back to the Swedish bands. And the collector chase started a lot of because of this book. And as always, when you do a project like this, an encyclopedia project, everyone is going to beat the next guy to find what is not in the book.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very note about this, Janne, that everyone's competing about. Oh, I have something that's not in the book. So I remember that, like in the late 90s, whenever someone found anything that wasn't in the first book, it was like super rare, not in the book. Well, good or bad. But now that book had so much to do with the fact that today, first wave of Swedish heavy metal is even an expression, and it's a very diehard sort of like. There's a lot of fandom around it. There is a collector craze about it. So a lot of that had to do with that one, and it was always so fun to try to find weird stuff that wasn't in the book. I remember in the late 90s, early 2000s, I remember I emailed some stuff to you, Janne, for the second book, and a lot of people did, of course. But now those books are so important, and I mean the third one, I sort of use this for when I need to flatten things, and this is the door stopper in a very literal sense. But when I need heavy shit to flatten shit with, it's this one and the Eastern book and some other ones. Now this is so crazy.
The title is correct then.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It contains all the records and flattens any that are slightly warped.
And I think one of the things which I always thought was so over the top was that it was not limited to like the complete Swedish metal from 1971 to 1999, or the complete hard rock, metal, speed, thrash, death. It was like, no, we'll have some alternative metal, we have some prog. So it was any genre that fitted into even remotely into hard rock. And it was up until the year that the book was released. Not the way I have done my smaller encyclopedias for my website. So I want to ask you, Janne, were you never tempted to sort of like restrict these projects a bit more to like, no, I'm just going to do like from this year to this year, or only these genres? Because to me that would have been more natural, to do the kind of stuff that I'm into and sort of restrict it. But your books, you made them everything from up until I released the book. Were you tempted to sort of like restrict the span of these books?
Actually, from the beginning, that was the plan to do like hard rock and heavy metal. And then I had people say, "Oh, why haven't you included that band?" Well, they're more like AOR. Yeah, but the hard rock collectors want that one as well. And then you have a band like Sky High, which hard rock fans like them as well. I mean, they're the Swedish ZZ Top, and I mean ZZ Top were included in the International Encyclopedia of Hard Rock and Heavy Metal. So instead of, I drew. That was one of my big problems, was to draw the kind of the borders. Where do I stop? And I figured, well, I'd rather have, because after the first book, what happened was exactly what you said. And I got into a record shop and it said super rare, not even in the book. And I thought, well, this is one of the singles that I rejected because it's not really hard rock or heavy metal. It's like helicopters or like punkish or on the wrong side of the border. So I figured, well, okay, then I better be a bit more forgiving, and instead I explain in the text why I included it, and also a bit about kind of describe the style as well. And that's also the reason why I, in the third book, have a whole section of why certain bands weren't included. These bands weren't included because I've had that question as well. Well, you included that band. Why didn't you include them? So, that's been one of the major kind of problems, to include as much as possible, but not too much.
Well, seeing Dan hold up that collection, the book, it blows me away that there's that much. I mean, I'm coming at this from a extreme metal perspective. You know, obviously I know there's heavy metal bands, there's hard rock bands, but I know this much about that, and it's an invaluable source for that in particular, because I think, well, from my circles, that Sweden metal is typically known for its world-renowned death metal, melodic death metal, and maybe a lesser extent black metal scenes. So it's cool that there's a resource out for not that stuff. Other people have covered that stuff. So what do you do with like things like Bathory? Does like Quorthon enter that tome at all, or is he?
Yeah, of course. I mean, death metal, black metal, that is all in there as well.
Yeah.
So it's basically from AOR to black metal.
Oh, okay. So it is include that as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow. Holy crap.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
That's been one of my one of the things that I've kind of thought was a bit fun to do was to find out the real names of a lot of the death and black metal musicians, which they haven't been that happy about. I haven't received any death threats, but there was one guy that was really pissed off at me. It was a band called Malign. I don't know if you know them. And he's the guy. He's related to Anders Tegner, who's like a Swedish rock journalist, and he worked with Heavy Load back in the day, and he's done a lot of like. He has been a music journalist for OK Magazine and that kind of stuff, and he Malign is like really evil black metal. And he didn't want to be associated with his relative in that, not officially anyway. So he wasn't happy that I wrote his real name in there. But it's and I've even had a couple of bands, and it was actually black metal bands that said, "We don't want to be in the book." Yeah, you don't get to decide that. all bands that have released records. The basic criteria for being in the book is that the band should have released something physical, like a vinyl, single, LP, or a CD. So digital doesn't count, and cassettes doesn't count. But and I wanted to have all the bands in there. So if you had released something, you can't really say I don't want to be in there, because will be in there anyway. We want to be obscure, and we want to be like fly under the radar. Yeah, sorry.
And don't bloody release records.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
we don't want to sell any records.
Well, speaking of band stuff, I do want to talk about Constancia and Overdrive for a minute. So you're active still in both of these bands, and among others, are you still out actively playing shows and touring when it's
Well, Overdrive
available?
we actually put Overdrive to sleep in 2022. We were supposed to do a bunch of festivals and stuff in 2020 to do like a 40-year anniversary and a goodbye shows, and then of course COVID came around.
Yeah.
And yeah, so in 2022 we did a 40+2 anniversary.
Right.
And we played Sweden Rock and a bunch of other festivals and stuff, and then we put the band to rest, because the thing is that we didn't have any like booking agency or management or that kind of stuff. We did everything ourselves, and I'm involved in quite a lot of other bands and projects. So it was kind of half-assed. We didn't really have anyone to book gigs and stuff, and there was one gig every 5 months or something. So we figure either we go full on or we kind of put the band to rest. So we decided to do that. And with Constancia, it was actually funny because we started the band it was a studio project, and it was the keyboard player asked me to play some guitar on some of his songs, and I thought it was really good stuff. And my music taste is more or less as wide as in my books. I like everything from like AOR and pump and that kind of stuff to some death metal as well. But and I really liked the stuff that he did, and I recorded guitars and then grew into a band. But the first time we were actually all of us got together was after we recorded the second album. When we're gonna do a video, so we actually everything is recorded and files sent back and forth and so. And now on the last two albums, we have a British singer, Pete Godfrey, and next year in August we are actually going to do our first live show.
Nice.
But I'm playing quite a lot with the. That's also kind of interesting because I mean, I played with the Thin Lizzy tribute bands in 2017, and when I started out playing in the late 70s, I always said that I'm never going to play covers. I'm not going to be playing any, like in Sweden we have a genre called dance music, top 40 crap, and I said I'd rather shape myself with a chainsaw instead of playing that kind of music.
But cover bands are the ones that tend to make the money.
That's the thing. When I was at a party, you know the band, you know Ken Anthony is. He was the manager for Pretty Maids and Merciful Fate.
Okay.
I was at his birthday party, and he had a stage there, and we were kind of jamming and stuff. It was me, the guitar player from Artillery, and the drummer from Overdrive as well, and the bass player from this Lizzy tribute band. And we were like, so what are we going to play? Something that everybody knows. Then Lizzy, yeah, everybody knew Lizzy. And we did Lizzy songs. And then he asked me afterwards if I wanted to, because they were doing a show with some guests and stuff, and asked me if I could, be a guest on a couple of songs. And I said, yeah, sure. And then I went to, because I live in Sweden, they live in Denmark, but I can see Denmark from where I live. And it takes me an hour to get there. So I went there and we rehearsed for the first time. It was like we'd played together for 10 years.
Oh,
it was
nice.
so much fun. Cool. I mean, I grew up with Thin Lizzy, and I love the guitar harmonies and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And me, the drummer, and the bass player, we're kind of the same age. And the singer, back when we started, he was 21. So but it was like we played. I mean, as guitar players, when you do that kind of harmony work, it's really important that you are the same level and you have the same kind of feeling and touch and whatever. And it was like we'd grown up together. So I loved it. And afterwards, they asked me, if, "I know you have a lot of stuff from projects, and but you want to join us?" Yeah. That was in 2017, and we get more gigs and we earn more money than Overdrive ever did.
It's crazy.
That's really ironic, but but that's the thing with that kind of band. Thin Lizzy, I mean, that's a band that I love the band, love the music, and I can kind of, that's something I stand by. Yeah, and I love playing that stuff, and people love it as well. So yeah.
Oh yeah,
very cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I see on your sort of biography page over on Metal Archives, you're also in a project called Zoom Club, and you mentioned you like Budgie a lot earlier. Was that like a Budgie tribute by chance? Did you do covers for that?
That was a short-lived thing. It was me and Peter Hermansson, the drummer from 220 Volts, and Michael Huyanen. He sang on the early ABCD stuff, and that was just. We did some original stuff, some of Peter's songs, and we did some cover stuff as well. That was just, we did one show and nothing really. We didn't have the time to put in there. But actually now I'm recording an album, which is, we have 7 songs already. It's actually a British band, and it's me and a Swedish drummer, and it's classic 80s heavy metal, like Griffin, Vicious Rumors, that kind of stuff. The band is called Nerve Star, and it's I really like that stuff, the stuff that we've done so far. And it's some of the songs are covers of unreleased or very obscure early 80s stuff, demo stuff, and that's never been released. And then I've just finished an album with another project called Eternal Wheel, which is riff-oriented 70s hard rock. Will come out early next year. And I'm doing another project with a hard rock in Swedish. In English, it'll be The Spear of Destiny, Ödets Spjut, which is kind of like Abramus Brahma, Prince Svart, that kind of riff-oriented 70s hard rock in Swedish.
Very cool, very cool.
And a couple of our other projects as well.
And you're not divorced? You say you're not divorced?
I'm not, no, but fortunately my wife is just as much into music. She wrote the official Pretty Maids biography as well, and she's currently working on another biography, Swedish drummer Hempo Hildén, who was in Trash, and unfortunately he died during the time that they were writing the book, but she's finishing it up now, so she has understanding with all that I do in the music.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Indeed.
Yeah. And I also I lack the ability of saying no. Like, I have this thing. Yeah, sure.
Yep.
And I work full time as well.
Wow.
So keeping your plate very full.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, Janne, something we talked about on part 1 that I'd like to get your input on. We talked a little bit about the fact that, as Dan mentioned, the early Swedish scene through the 80s, there were tons of bands back then, but they didn't get a lot of attention until more like the late 90s and early 2000s, when your book came out and when Dan was putting stuff up on the Corroseum and other websites sprang up. And we kind of talked a little bit about why that was. Why did you have this very kind of well-populated underground Swedish metal scene that just never seemed to get the traction or the attention that like the new wave of British heavy metal did, and why the bands didn't get held in that same regard? Because new wave of British heavy metal, of course, people had kind of latched onto that by the end of the 80s and were already making a big deal out of it. would be interested to know, what was your perspective on that? What things kind of helped foster such a, very diverse and large scene in Sweden in the early 80s? But then why did it seem like it got forgotten for such a long period of time compared to the scene in the UK or other parts of Europe?
I think we had a lot of bands back in the even back in the actually a couple of the releases that I picked out to talk about was some things that has been kind of overlooked, and some things that you missed in the last show that
Okay.
I think needs to be get in the spotlight as well. But I think that one problem was that we, especially when you come to the 80s, we had so many bands that were in the kind of the influenced by a lot of the the melodic hard rock and the in the same era or even earlier than Europe. But I mean, we didn't really have any good hard rock producers here in Sweden. We didn't have the labels didn't really know how to sell it either. I mean, we had I wouldn't even call it labels, but labels like Pang Records and Platina Records, who signed young bands. I mean, Pang had they were a scam label. A band, I think they paid like $500 or something to record a single. They got 2 days in the studio, which was like a basement. If they didn't finish in those 2 days, they had to pay a lot of extra. Then the label printed, I think they printed like 500 copies. The band got 250 copies. The label kept 250 copies, and the label owned the rights for the recording. And that's how a lot of those Pang releases were done. And the label didn't. I mean, they didn't do any marketing. They didn't try to get the band played on the radio. And I mean, the band had their 250 copies to sell to friends and family. And the same thing with Platina. Platina was originally a dance band label, who suddenly thought that, hard rock, maybe we should do some of those bands. And they did kind of the same thing. So they didn't really do any marketing. It was a way for the label to earn some extra money, but they didn't put anything into it. A lot of those things, a lot of those releases kind of just flew under the radar, and nobody paid attention until collectors started to kind of find them and discover that they were really good. Plus, I think that, and also I'm working with Cult Metal Classics with releasing a lot of stuff that was only recorded as demos. And there are so many really good Swedish demos from the 80s that was never released. And a lot of that is also because bands, and I mean, after we Overdrive split in 1985, and I had a new band called Overheat. And between 1985 and 1993, I mean, we wrote around 150 songs, and we just rehearsed. And there were so many bands that rehearsed, and they recorded demos, and they were like, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. I think the Swedes are really bad at kind of promoting themselves. I mean, we're kind of the opposite of the the Motley Crues and all those kind of bands. They dress up and they get an image, and then they are ready. And then, okay, music, yeah, we're going to do that as well.
Oh yeah, who
Yeah.
brought the songs?
Yeah. In Sweden, it's kind of the opposite. We really try to master our craft, but then we don't know how to sell it, and we don't know how to market ourselves. And it's not in the Swedish nature to say, "Oh, we are fucking great." We don't do that. It's like, yeah, we're okay, I guess. So yeah. What do you say, Dan?
Yeah, you totally nailed it. And I was also discussing this on our last stream, that there is so much talent and great songwriters and musicians in the Swedish, in the old Swedish metal scene. But as you said, we were hopeless at promoting ourselves, and it seemed sort of interesting to compare Sweden to what would be a fairly comparable scene to, like, Holland or Belgium or Germany around the same time, because mid European metal scene at the exact same time, because those countries had great, I mean, not huge, but die-hard dedicated medium-sized labels, shitloads of fanzines. They had sort of like an underground scene. If you compare like all the great Swedish demos that were released in the first half of the 80s, you very rarely read about them in old signs. Compared to like Belgium, Holland, Germany, there was this stuff was spread out, and you have all of these cool labels. Just looking at Germany with all these, like, I mean, they were not great labels, and all the stuff they didn't release wasn't great, but they had an sort of semi-underground industry of releasing albums with spearheading metal stuff even in the first half of the 80s. We did not have that for some reason. We had one or two basic metal labels maybe, but it is maybe some sort of Swedish mentality that we're so happy that we can play on this youth cafe and release the single, but releasing a record, sending out our demos outside of Sweden. Oh God, no. It's a weird situation.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, because that is in contrast to scenes like in the UK, where they had, this whole weekly music press, with multiple, nationwide publications that were in competition with each other and, constantly trying to find bands and hype up things that the others weren't. And then, like Janne said, the whole culture in Los Angeles as metal popped up there, of course, was all about promotion and hype as well. So it's interesting that Sweden just didn't have that particular component.
The funny thing is that everything I described are lackluster sort of drive and building up a real underground and a motivated scene. That is exactly what exploded, of course, in the late 80s and early 90s with the death metal scene.
I was going to say, they kind of got it right. Yeah. They got it right.
Tons of signs, tons of labels, huge underground support, and then it just exploded. But that was another scene. Similar things happened in other European countries for the traditional metal scene in the first half of the 80s. Not in Sweden. We eventually got there, but at our death metal stage.
But I think then around in the late 80s, when death metal started coming as well, I think the labels knew better how to sell hard rock and heavy metal, and you had more labels that were kind of like Roadrunner, Black Mark, that was kind of had the experience of working with metal, and they had their channels to get the stuff out as well.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of laid the groundwork back in the early 80s.
It seems like. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
When we recorded Metal Attack, I mean, I remember when we got in the studio in Stockholm, and the producer that we had, he had never recorded a hard rock or heavy metal band in his life, and he had just spent 7 or 8 weeks with a Swedish dance band, Cool Candies, and he basically drenched our album in reverb. And it's, if I could remix it now, I would love to. We try to keep it down as much as possible, but for the second album, he knew a bit more. But that first album, he didn't really know what to do with us.
But you talk about the marketing side and getting into the late 80s with the death metal bands. The labels started to know what to do with these bands, but also you got these kids very much influenced by tape trading, writing letters, the underground. So, they started off by sending out their tapes, and come to find out, little fanzines here and there, like Dan mentioned. All of a sudden, we're selling 300 copies of this demo, or 500, or 1,000 copies of this demo. They're constantly dubbing tapes and sending them out. Somewhere along the line, the youth figured out how to market themselves. They actually had an infrastructure to do so. So that all the labels can do is like, wow, this band has sold 1,000 demos. Chances are we can do something with this. We've got the infrastructure. We now know what to do with heavy music.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, I guess, just time and evolution, and
Yeah.
technology. Yep.
Indeed. All right, well, guys, should we start taking some turns? It sounds like Janne's got several things he definitely wants to make sure get their time in the spotlight, and the rest of us do too. So let's start working our way through some records and see what we've all got.
Yeah, I'll start at the beginning, and I'll start with this one. November.
Okay.
This is considered the first Swedish hard rock album, released in 1970, and it's really, I mean, the band was influenced by like Cream and Free and that kind of stuff, and they brought like more heavy riffs into the mix as well. They sing in Swedish. The funny thing is they did a single in English. They have one song called Mount Everest, which it's in Swedish here, but they did it in English as well. And they released one single in English, and they did a tour of the UK. But the audience didn't want them to sing in English. They wanted them to sing in Swedish because it was more exotic. So they kind of stuck to singing in Swedish after that as well. And they released 3 albums in between 1970 and 1972. And all 3 albums are really, really good and really like proto metal or riff oriented hard rock. If you're into bands like Mountain and that kind of stuff, you should definitely check them out.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard the name, but I've never checked them out.
Yeah, definitely Sweden's finest 70s heavy rock band.
Yeah,
was very happy to actually catch them live once at that. It was on a ferry, the Mellotron ferry. I bet you were there as well, Janne.
I wasn't, but
many years ago, like 10 plus years ago.
Yeah, man, I saw them at Sweden Rock Festival, and I got my album November 2 signed as well. So.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
very nice.
All right, Dan, you're up.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any specific scientific order where to start, but I guess we will start with some ultra classic 80s Swedish metal, which I totally forgot to mention on the last stream. I've spent this and yesterday going through a lot of Swedish stuff and kicking myself for not mentioning this amazing, really cool Swedish heavy metal band called Mindless Sinner.
Yep. We got yelled at for leaving Mindless Sinner off last time.
Yeah, we should be.
We should have been.
Yep. Mindless Sinner was one of those iconic Swedish 80s metal bands. They released a mini album and this full length, and later a 7-inch and another full length under just the name Mindless. This is the first full length, and usually the rule of thumb is that the first mini album is supposed to be the best one or the coolest one. Actually, this is the best stuff they ever did. The first full length album with Mindless Sinner, Turn on the Power. It is one of the finest Swedish heavy metal albums from the first half of the 80s. This is actually, I mean, these are some really bloody speedy songs, almost like proto speed metal tracks on it. Great songwriting, great, this what people associate with classic Swedish metal, great harmonies, great songs, and not at all in the pigeonhole of melodic Europe style. This is actually a lot more metal than they get credit for, or what you might think about just watching the sleeve with a sort of corny color sleeve in the logo and the lady on the front. Now this is actually even heavier than it looks. Now it is a really killer Swedish metal, almost semi-power metal album. The original, unfortunately, is even harder to find than the first mini, but it has been reissued. And Janne might know if there is probably which label it is, but yeah, mine was thinner, originally on Fingerprint, but one of those absolute musts if you're going to dive into classic first wave Swedish metal. So,
and they are still playing and still releasing new stuff.
Yeah, they are. I think I saw them on both on Keep It True and Muscle Rock. Great gigs. I haven't, as usual, I haven't heard the full albums of their new stuff. You can fill us in on that, Janne. But you know, first mini and especially this full length killer. Check them out.
All right, Alan.
But yeah, it looks like they actually just released an album in October on High Roller Records called Metal Merchants. So cool. I have not actually come across that one yet. All right. One that I got yelled at for leaving out of our part 1 stream on Swedish Metal is what I'll start with. Folks were like, why didn't you bring this up? You always talk about this band. You love this record. And it's like, well, I had it out. I just didn't get around to it. Because, again, it's a huge scene. And we had lots of cool stuff to talk about. Small band from the early Swedish scene. They only made one single, but it's a really good single. It's the band Scratch. They made the 1 7-inch here with Before the Rain and Metal Breaker on it. And Metal Breaker in particular is just one of my favorite 80s heavy metal songs from any scene from any year, not just among, early Swedish metal or among traditional metal. It's one of the true, top 10 songs, put it on the playlist for eternity type tracks.
They were actually from the same area that Overdrive was from. So we saw them around there as well.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Again, not being in Europe, I'm terrible with the band geography for different countries. But yeah, I came across the Scratch single because they were the one non-British band that got included in a series of CD compilations that came out in the mid and late 90s. There was this new wave of British heavy metal CD compilation set. Reportedly, it was actually being put out by a collector who lived in Japan at the time, but I don't think he was Japanese. I think he was British. And then he put out, all these CDs featuring a lot of kind of rare, obscure new wave of British heavy metal tracks. And one of them was the track Metal Breaker. I'm pretty sure it's on volume 4 in that CD set. And again, it's one of the best songs in the entire set. So people were, of course, nuts to find out more about the band in the single. But eventually it turned out, well, one reason nobody knew it was that it wasn't actually a British band. So it really wasn't a new wave of British heavy metal product from that scene. It's always been kind of a hard single to find and such. They did get a compilation release. This is one of the Cult Metal Classic volumes that have been put out. I think this one came out in 2017. And, there's only 3 extra songs on it. It has the 2 tracks from the single and then the 3 more that were unreleased by the band. So you get a look at the guys there. And these things, you always wish there was more, but in some cases, there just aren't any other songs that have been preserved on tape that are usable. So it was very cool that, Scratch did get the Cult Metal Classics treatment and that we got to hear a few more songs from them long after the fact.
And they actually... They reunited and played live when this was released as well, just a couple of years.
Did they? Oh, that's so cool.
It sounded great. Yeah, it's actually, I think it's on YouTube as well. You can find it.
I'll have to look it up. I'm very bad on not looking up live stuff on YouTube. But yeah, they had for a band that did, one single and then just disappeared, they had a great sound, obviously very talented at their craft. But it was one single and that was all they wrote. And now it's just one of those singles that's...
The singer is also, the singer is also on there was around that time, there was a lot of projects for like the starvation in Africa, Ethiopia and all that kind of stuff. And we Overdrive played on on a festival in Karlskrona, where this band is from. Together, we played together with Interaction and a couple of other bands, and they did a project called "To Africa with Love," which featured members from Scratch and Killer Hawk and some other like local bands. So that single, so one-sided single. It's not easy to find, but it's not that expensive if you find it, and it's like a Swedish Metal aid kind of thing. But it's a fun record. So if you find it, get it.
Very cool. I'd heard of that, but completely had forgotten about it. Dan?
The worth mentioning that the Scratch single at least used to be probably the number one most expensive first wave of Swedish heavy metal 7-inch. Maybe nowadays stuff like Gotham City 7-inch might have become more expensive, but that one used to be the holy grail. That one a Sacrifice, maybe Jackwave. But that used to be the number one rarest one. And I remember a friend of mine bought it, I think about 10 years ago. He bought it for an exorbitant amount. Since I won't mention his name, I can mention the price. He bought it for something like $500, and it made the local news, like in the local newspaper. Someone bought our old local band single for $500.
Couldn't give them away back in the day, but
that was like 10 years ago or something like that. And I think that after that, because I think it was on Tradera probably, and I think after that, more copies started turning up, and the price went down maybe a few $100s. But it is still one of those holy grails.
Yeah, it's still an expensive record. But you're right, Dan. There was a period of time where, copies sold for ridiculous amounts of money. It took me a very long time to find a copy, being obviously not many of them made it to the United States. So even worse trying to collect stuff like that over here. But all right, so Marty, what would you like to show for your first round here?
Well, I'm going to be the guy that's showing a lot of normal stuff, probably. I don't have anything super rare, but...
That's quite all right. Again, we're covering
and
the
also
whole
probably
spectrum.
I'm probably showing things that were shown last time. I didn't see the episode. So I'm going to be doing a lot of associations. As a kid growing up in Michigan, getting into this stuff, it just seemed like, Sweden was like this magical place it was huge, tons of bands. Everywhere you went, there was, death metal on the corner. I don't know, busking, but it just, you start to realize as you dig in deeper and deeper, it's still a very small scene. It's just a lot of members getting together outside of their main bands, or main band will break up and spawn two other bands. And, me and Dan were talking in the dugout before we started that, Sweden and Norway were very big, especially in the black metal era of, the supergroup tended to be, it could be poised to be just as big as the original band. So they the supergroup bands could have an offshoot and have their own career independent of where they came. But having said all of that, we're going to start with, for me, is 1988, big year for death metal, and bands like this, Nihilist. This is essentially members of Entombed and Johnny Headland from Unleashed. So once this band broke up, 90% of these demos ended up being on this classic. Just recorded, I would say recorded better. A lot of people say no, that this stuff sounds better than this. So it's all killer. I mean, you have good source material. The production could be irrelevant, but so yeah. Nihilist is the band that spawned these two bands. Obviously, one band had a little bit more success than the other, but both of them come from the same place and sound nothing alike, which is interesting. I know Johnny was the elder of the band. He was the older guy, and it's just interesting to see that he morphed off into something that doesn't sound anything like Nihilist. I don't think anyway. But so starting off, the Swedish death metal cavalcade here. My next clump of bands is just as influential and come from the same era as well. But Entombed, Unleashed, and of course Nihilist. This is a sound. The sound on this album is still replicated today. There's the
Oh, yeah.
chainsaw HM2, death metal sound HM2, Boss heavy metal 2, guitar pedal. It's all over the place. Has it kind of weakened the impact of the original? Of course, that's just the way it goes. But it came from a great place, and even though it's irrelevant these days, a lot of bands doing it, it's still kind of killer. Still, you get one of those pedals and mess with it, it's like, oh, I could play anything and it sounds awesome. It's amazing. Janne, I'm sure you could attest to this. Crank all those knobs to the right and like, yeah, this is awesome. Crunch all day, zhung, 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 zhung. That's it. That's all I'm doing. But
okay, competition number 1. Could you name the connection between Unleashed and Constancia?
I could probably with Metal Archives. Hold on. Is that cheating?
I was actually the guitar player, Frederick Folkarer. He mixed the first and the third Constancia album.
Oh, right on.
Oh, neat.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's a small scene, like we're saying. Kid from the U.S. It's like, wow, this place must be just bloated with bands and people, and then of course you get older and start reading your geography books and realizing that's not the case.
If you check the name registry in my book, and you see each person is like 5 bands or 6 bands.
Yeah. Or like yours, 10 bands.
Yeah.
All right, Janne, you're up again.
Okay. So this was another one that was it's really one of those hard rock early heavy metal or hard rock milestones in Swedish history, and it's this band, Neon Rose. The first album, A Dream of Glory and Pride, came out in 1974, and then Reload, the third album. Both these albums are really on the forefront of like hard rock, really heavy hard rock in Sweden. And the band sings in English, which they got a lot of flack for, because around this time, the Swedish music scene was very left-oriented. There was you were supposed to sing in Swedish, and you were supposed to sing about politics, and you were supposed to sing about the nature, and it didn't matter if you couldn't play your instrument. You were supposed to play anyway, and it sounded like shit. And there was a couple of bands around, and Neon Rose was one of those bands. And when they tried to get a record deal for the first album, it was like, yeah, but can't you sing in Swedish instead? It's like, no. And they were really trashed by the music media at the time for singing in English. Are they ashamed of being Swedish? But these are really heavy rock milestones, and especially on this the first album. Yeah, it's so they.
Janne, you're breaking up just a little bit there.
Froze. I thought it was me for a second. He unfroze.
Okay, we're back.
We missed just the ending of what you were saying there. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. This album, Reload, came out in 1975, and it's like killer tracks like "The Smell of Death," "The Man's Not a Man," "The Race for Knowledge," "Nightbirds," "Dead Eyes." Really heavy stuff. The artwork was never really finished, so this is more like the first kind of drawing that they did, and then the label. The band took too much time in the studio. It became too expensive, so they didn't really get to do a finished cover. So they used the first like sketches and stuff. So this is wasn't supposed to look like this, but now it's for this early on in the Swedish scene, this was a really heavy album. I can highly recommend it.
Very cool. Yeah, I've heard Dan and others mention the name, but I've never checked them out.
Yeah, I'm ashamed to say you're not the first one, Janne, to recommend this band. I have other friends who talked about them. You send me some tracks. I'm sorry to say I haven't listened to them yet, but I know that they are a very praised band, and a lot of people in Sweden are considering them to be very underrated as far as when it comes to Swedish metal history. Still, I haven't dived into them yet.
It's funny you mentioned that not singing in Swedish was looked down upon back then, where really it's kind of if you just sing in Swedish, it's kind of a curse, because you're always going to be, I mean, back nowadays that I don't know if that's the same case, but back then it seemed like you're always going to be a regional band. You're never going to really, kids in America aren't going to be, singing along with your music. Mm-hmm. It kind of it limits your growth, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, America was evil and capitalist, and this
still are. I mean, come on. Has it got better? It's going down quick.
A socialist country back then. So
yeah.
No, but joking aside, no, but it made sense. This was, I think, we talked about some about this on the last stream, and as Janne said, this was definitely the dogma back then, that singing in English was not considered cool. You had both the prog scene and the punk scene against you if you tried to sing in English.
Wow. Yeah.
But I mean, Neil Rose was on Vertigo, so it was a big label.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the band themselves, they didn't give a shit about Sweden. They wanted to get outside. They wanted to, I mean, the album was also released in Germany on Red Bull Records, like a sub-label. But they didn't get across the pond to the US, or I don't think they even got to the UK. I know they played in Sweden and Norway. That was about it.
Good deal.
All right, Dan.
Okay, I'm not gonna steer off the path too much. I'm gonna continue on the same track and bring up an album which actually revisited today, because when I was flipping through my Swedish selection and realized, why the hell didn't I talk about this one last time? So we're staying in the first part of the Swedish first wave heavy metal 80s with another great mini. We have to talk about Parasite.
Another local band.
I'm sure. This band only officially released this mini album in I think it's 84, right? Yeah, it's 84.
Yeah.
As archetypical as Swedish heavy metal, or even Euro metal or Swedish heavy metal goes. Such a cool fit. They have sort of, I think the vocalist in this band sounds a bit more nasty than the typical super melodic vocalist. He could be like a German singer, but then he sort of is pending between the sort of nasty mid-European Euromel style and singing, but still has this grips on to the archetype, the Swedish harmonies, and it's a great 4-song mini album of early 80s metal, one of Sweden's finest. It's absolutely beautiful sleeve. Cool thing, some nerdy facts for diehard record collectors. There's several original versions of this one. The most easiest ones to find outside of Sweden would be the Roadrunner pressing. There is actually also a Banzai pressing, a Canadian Banzai pressing for those who select that one. Yeah.
And a sword as well.
Oh, sorry?
And
there are two Swedish pressings actually. The most common one that you will find in Sweden and maybe in Europe is the Sword Record pressing. The Sword Records was one of the few dedicated metal labels in the 80s in Sweden, together with Fingerprint. But there were also the original local Hellwreck pressing. Hellwreck was not really a label per se. They were a studio, I think. Studio who planted their name on. I think they did this one, and maybe was it like the Faith single, some other stuff which was on Hell Record. So if you want to be a diehard collector, do not think that the Sword pressing is the original. You need the original Hellwreck one. But no, still, and I know it has of course been reissued as well, so it is by no means a difficult album to find in some form or other. But
actually, the CD is kind of hard to find, even that one.
The reissues, okay, maybe now. But yeah, one of those Swedish archetype Swedish metal classics. The song "Night Winds" is that super hit. Which if you want to do a mixtape list of cool tracks to check out Parasite Night Winds. Whole mini is great. Night Winds, the best one. Parasite, Swedish classic.
I have so many stories about that band.
Tell me. Come on. We got all night.
Yeah, the singer Paul Sanicelli, he was a rock star in his own mind. After Parasite wasn't that long lived. They rehearsed. They were around at the same time as Overdrive, and we were from the same place, so we played a lot together. And the drummer later was in Hexenhaus and Memento Mori. And Paul, the singer, after Paradise split, they formed a band called E-Type, where Paul was singing, and it was actually the drummer from Overdrive and the guitar player from Killer Hawk, and they were very influenced by the band Streets with Mike Slamer and Steve Walsh, more melodic 80s. And Paul, he used to ad-lib his vocals sometimes, and he used to sing about the sweet pussy of love. Yeah,
the sweet
he was, and then he had a band called Seven in around 2000. They just recorded there's one video up on YouTube, and they were supposed to record an album, but he kind of lost his voice, and he had some personal problems and stuff, but they did. I remember they played one gig at a local town festival, and they were just going to play in the middle of the day at the local stage, and he was the rock star, and he went over and he demanded a lot of alcohol and that kind of stuff. It was like, shut the fuck up, playing in the afternoon here. The sad part is that he was a really, really talented musician, talented songwriter, but he fucked it up, unfortunately. And they reformed the guitar player Anders Holmström and Paul, the singer, and one of the other guys, I think it was the other guitar player. They formed a band called Rebelline and released one CD as well, but that's more like southern rock. They all moved up to Stockholm and released that CD in the late 80s, early 90s.
All right, Alan.
All right. Another one I really regretted not ever getting around to in our Swedish Metal Part 1 stream is this album, Proud. Fire Breaks the Dawn. Always liked this one a lot. It was one of the earlier Swedish metal vinyls I picked up. Got this sometime in the mid-90s from a vinyl dealer in New York. He always had like a about a few times a year, he'd put out a short catalog. It was like a mail order thing, send him a couple of stamps. He'd send you a copy of it. You had to call him up between certain hours of the day to, place an order. And he always had these crazy write-ups about the albums he really liked. For a lot of the albums, it's just like, here's the album, here's the pressing, here's, how much it is. But, for some albums, he'd write this whole like paragraph. It was just like, the best hype sticker material imaginable. And, in one, he had, this album listed. And yeah, he just, had this huge write-up about, how this was just, one of the, truly amazing lost power metal gems from Europe, and, going on and on about it. And so it's like, well, the album title's cool. And if the write-up is good, obviously the album must be awesome too. You believe these things when you're a teenager buying stuff. But this one works out. Absolutely. It really is fantastic. It's the kind of album just flipping through a box of records at a record store or a show. A lot of folks may not pick up on it. And, the cover's, kind of generic. The picture on the back is very 80s looking, pink lights, lots of, fog, lots of hair. Can't really tell what it's going to sound like, but it is a fantastic album. Just starts off really good. It's a track Starfighter, but especially Echoes from the Past. Track 2 on side A is another one of these just amazing anthems. The guitar work on it is just top notch. It just, swirling guitars, a great vocal hook in the chorus. Another just, A++ kind of song. The band did a couple of demos, but that was kind of it. Oddly, too, this wasn't like a small self-release or anything. The band was on EMI, so they did get a contract with a bigger label and got the album out, but they never got a chance to follow it up with anything until 2021. And they did a reunion album here a few years ago, which I don't have a copy of. I've heard it, and it sounded pretty decent. Again, I don't tend to listen to a lot of the newest releases sometimes, but that one is like, I had to check it out to see what they still sounded like all these years later, and it still sounded all right. But yeah, the Fire Breaks the Dawn album, one of my favorites from the scene. Last just quick fun story about it was years ago on the old Metal Maniacs magazine had an online forum that was very popular right before the turn of the century. And one day, kind of just scrolling through it, looking at topics, a new member had posted like their first topic, and their question was, does anybody remember the Swedish band Proud? And I just instantly thought, I was like, this guy and I are going to get along. And sure enough, we did. We ended up actually meeting a few times. He was a musician in Raleigh, North Carolina. And when I lived there for a few years, we crossed paths and traded some albums and stuff. Really, really nice guy. Haven't heard from him in years. But yeah, it was his introduction to Metal Maniacs, which of course at the time was covering, Korn and Marilyn Manson and, the whole spectrum of stuff. He wanted to know about, this one particular album, from this band from Sweden from '84. I zeroed in and replied to his topic very quickly, and the rest was history.
And they actually live about 30 minutes from where I live now.
Oh, do they? Okay, awesome.
Sweden's not a big country. We all live 30 minutes from each other.
It's actually, I would say my problem with the output of Swedish metal recordings in the 80s is that there were, at least to me, personal opinion, there were few full lengths, which were really great. Lots of singles, demos, and minis. But that is one of the greatest full-length albums of the 80s from Sweden, definitely. That is one of maybe 5, which I consider really great. Yeah, absolutely. Great choice.
Would have to agree. Thank you. See, all right, Marty, I'll be back in just a second, but what have you got for your next one? I want to see before I run off for a moment.
Well, more associations. The band, I think, that was a lot bigger started before this, but we're going to talk about Carnage, Dark Recollections.
Nice. Great album.
This is members. You got 3 members of Dismember here. You got Matti Karki, I'm sure I'm saying it wrong, David Blomqvist, Karki, and Fred Espy. And you got Johnny Dorvik on guitar. Yep, he's listed on Metal Archives as guitar on this, but he's listed as bass on the back of this. So he was labeled as the singer on Clandestine, but it wasn't true. He was Nicky Anderson that sang on Clandestine. And of course, Michael Amott, who went on to be in Carcass. So this comes out in 1990, and these guys disband. I think Dismember started in 88. I think they broke up for a minute, and that's why Carnage started. Is that how that works? Or is that wrong?
I don't know.
I would consider them two different bands with shared
Right.
members, I think. Yeah.
Right. Well, then Dismember comes out in 91, and Carnage is no more. And of course, Michael Amott connection. He went on to be in Carcass on
That's
Protestantism.
Spiritual Beggars.
Yeah, and Spiritual Beggars. Yep. And of course,
Arch
Arch Enemy, the big one.
Yep.
Karki, and we're going to talk about all the offshoot bands. We got Carbonized.
Oh, Carbonized were really good.
This is not an OG. A friend of mine Xeroxed this for me and made a CDR for me, but still, this is great. And later on down the road, talking about how the family continues to put out other stuff. You've got Murder Squad with it, which is Matty, and it's got hold on one second. I'll tell you everybody in here because it's a kind of a smorgasbord of. Oh, I have it over
They
here.
released a single on Stormbringer as well, I remember.
What's that?
Murder Squad, Stormbringer Records released a 7-inch with them.
Yeah, one of Niklas' first releases. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm.
And who's in this? Peter, who was in Merciless. Ulf Sederlund, who was, of course, in Entombed. Maddie on vocals. And Jorgen Sandstrom from this other massive Swedish band, Grave. So, I mean, it's just, you can see the lineage, the family tree is just, I don't know how the hell you did this encyclopedia thing, because you started investigating family trees, it's just going to look insane. It's going to look insane. So, and this is a band, we've talked about this multiple times. This is a band that people, even though they got back together or they reformed, people just don't talk about Grave. And back in the day, I love this shit. The first 3 records, up through Solace, I love it. And now I guess they're all back together with Sandstrom on vocals again. I don't know if they're going to put out an album or just do shows. But, yep, it's an incestuous family tree when you start looking at Swedish members in other bands, which we're going to get into some even more here. Maybe not as extensive, but I covered the 2 big ones for sure.
Yeah, we have a Swedish expression called incest, familjefest. Not going to translate that. Yeah. Cool that the first one you picked out was Carnage, because I remember being really nerdy now, but back in the demo era of the spurring Swedish death metal scene, there was so much love for the Carnage demos. The Carnage demos were so cool. The album didn't clock with me that much, but the demos were great. Carbonized demos were so cool, and the first LP as well. Great choices. And I think we talked about them in the. Unfortunately, I don't have any of the demo of the CDs left, but there was also this band called Furbow.
Oh, they're awesome.
Which were also connected to Carnage, and
I totally forgot to grab like those Shredded Dreams and
those. I'm gonna say it again.
Right.
I said it before on part 1. Those Shredded Dreams. Is that the mini or the full length? Is it the white one or the red one?
It's the white one.
Okay, yeah, that's the mini. The full length with Furbow, and I'm kicking myself for not keeping this CD. The #1 greatest death and roll album ever made.
They were one of the many bands that said, "Oh, Entombed's doing it, we can do it too." But they actually did it well. They did it well.
Oh, yeah, they did it so much better. Yeah. That family of bands were really cool. Yeah.
Yep. And you mentioned these are different bands, and they are. And if you've never heard either of these bands by some strange reason, Carnage was more brutal death, I guess you could call it, thicker, meatier. Dismember was sharper, more melodic, sharp, and mean.
Carnage were more autopsy, while I guess Dismember were a bit faster and more. more
razor sharp guitars. The guitars,
more brutal and faster. While Carnage were very sort of autopsy death influence.
All right, Janne, you are back.
Yeah. So I'll dive back into the 70s swamp. Here's one that is also sadly overlooked. Shaggy. If you are into early Uriah Heep, kind of heavy Deep Purple, this is a killer album. From 1975. Lesson for Beginners. They did this album. They did a tour of Hungary together with the band Color, a Hungarian band, and I know they did a live show that was released on or recorded by Hungarian radio. We tried to, because this album has been reissued by Cult Metal Classics. This is quite an expensive album today, but we tried to get that live recording as well, but it wasn't available anywhere. Funny story was that the bass player of this band, he organized some shows, and he organized a show with the Runaways in Sweden, and he ripped everybody off, and the promoter went, but he I think the booking agency or something, that they were going to get his fridge instead of money, and he went to his house, and his mother threatened to kill them, and there was
Wow,
drama. Wow.
Drama. But they reformed without the bass player, and they have released 3 more albums now, kind of the same style. Really good band as well, and together with this one, and this one has a really corny cover. You shouldn't be afraid to check it out because of the cover, but this is actually a really good album. Rhapsody, also in the that kind of
the band photo, that would have been a hard fucking veto for me if I saw that. This is gonna go on our cover. That guy on the end, no.
Yeah.
There's no laughing in metal.
Yeah. This is also kind of Deep Purple style hard rock 70s. It came out in 1978, and there were a couple of members from Rhapsody that were trying out in Shaggy, so they were around the same area. And Rhapsody, actually, this album was reissued by a German label on CD, but they were, because of the Italian band Rhapsody, they renamed them Rhapsody Sweden. MTM Records. So MTM Records reissued this as Rhapsody Sweden with a much cooler cover. And they actually recorded some new stuff as well. And I'm working with another label called Regain Records. They also have a label called Helter Skelter, and this one will be reissued as well with actually a new bonus track as well. So a couple of the members are still going. The singer is just as good as he was back then. So this is actually, if you're into like Deep Purple, Uriah Heep, that kind of stuff, these 2 albums, highly recommended. Shaggy and Rhapsody.
Yeah. Shaggy's always had a good reputation amongst fans of early 70s hard rock.
I haven't heard Shaggy much, but I know a lot of people are giving praise to the Rhapsody album, and I know at a friend's place a couple of years ago where we were listening through the Rhapsody album, and definitely one of those underrated Swedish early hard rock ones.
All right, Dan, you are up, sir.
Yeah. Okay. We're going from classic metal, death metal, blah blah blah. I'm going to keep confusing things with going to a genre which we haven't addressed yet, and this is sort of like a very weird in between album.
Tango.
tongue. No, but very much in between all these genres which we have talked about so far. This is actually quite a popular Swedish band in the 90s. I'm going to talk about their sort of, because collector nerd, talk about their first private pressing with the band Morgana Le Fay. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yep.
I had that in my hand today. I was like, I'll do this one instead.
Morgana Le Fay, I think people, power metal fans will be familiar with the band Morgana Le Fay, I think.
Yep.
They had quite a good career in the 90s, released lots of CDs on the Black Mark label, the Battery label. This one, the first album that he did was a private pressing in, I think, a very weird number of like 527 copies of whatever it was. But this was sort of like it is sort of like a demo. It was recorded in 1990, but this is absolutely killer power thrash. One of Sweden's, it's a genre that Sweden wasn't really famous for, at least in the 80s and maybe later in the 90s. But Symphonies of the Damned with Morgana Le Fay, 1990. This is actually a great power thrash album. Amateurish, yes, yeah, typical private pressing demo style, but still sort of technical, comparable to, of course, stalwarts like Metal Church and the likes. I really like the A side of this album, like songs like The Whore of Babylon and Symphony of the Damned, the title track, Fatal Illusions, very epic. The B side sort of steers more towards the sort of Metallica derivatives, but in a good way. But a little Swedish treasure of power thrash, and it's one of those bands which are sort of in between being after their time and ahead of the time, because that style was something that became sort of semi popular in the 90s. And the cool thing about this album, it was re-recorded by the band in, I think, 1998 or 1999, just under the name Le Fay, and even reissued on vinyl in that. It was released on CD in 98, 99, a re-recording of this album, and eventually on a vinyl version of that one appeared on Night of the Vinyl Dead. The weird thing, and this is a hot take for me, for officially from the Corroseum, I'm gonna say that the re-recording is maybe even better than the original. I'm sorry, but that has to do with this style of epic power thrash, really flowered with it has the same vocalist, but you can tell that this vocalist had a couple of years of training between the original recording and doing a couple of Morgana Le Fay albums in between. And they re-recorded this, better production, better vocals. And in some genres, that would be a no-no. In this genre, it actually works. And the re-recording is great. You can find the CD easily. I'm sure it's been released. Original vinyl, well, it's Night of the Vinyl Dead. It's going to be expensive, but this original, very expensive. But no, as far as Swedish power thrash goes, this is one of the great classics. I have listened to a lot of the Morgana Le Fay later CDs as well. They are, of course, quality stuff in that genre, but they fall under the umbrella of my derogatory term when it comes to 90s metal, which is this is adult-oriented metal. This is too grown up for me. My inner 14-year-old just want to go back and listen to Omen and Jag Panzer and Slayer and things that is the 90s. It's too adult for me.
Oh yeah, teenage me would
but
kick my ass now if my teenage me knew what I like now. It wouldn't be pretty. It'd be a fight.
It is quality stuff, but not for me personally. But the first one will appeal to 80s power metal fans and collectors and fans who might, as me, be skeptical to the 90s career and 90s adult-oriented metal in general. But the first one, great. And once you discovered it, check out the re-recording. It's a cool surprise because it sounds like killer epic power metal album.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know a lot of the bands.
The singer's got my surname. I always remember that band because of that. Charles Ripkinen. Yeah. No.
Yeah, I know some of their later stuff, and like you said, Dan, they're one of those bands that kind of fall in between styles.
Ripkinen.
Yeah.
Are you related?
Probably not. I hear that name in Finland is like Smith in America. You go to the phone book, it's like page after page of it. Yeah. Of course, maybe it is. I don't know. Who knows?
I was actually in touch with Charles about reissuing the first one on for Cult Metal, but they weren't interested. They didn't think it sounded good enough. So, yeah.
Oh, that's a shame.
All right. Alan, I was interrupting you. I'm sorry. Did you have something to say and I cut you off? I'm sorry. No?
Nope.
Okay. You're up.
All right. Let's see. Someone mentioned this band a little bit earlier, and they surprisingly didn't come up in part one. So time to circle back to them. I chose 220 Volt. 220 Volt is a band some people cringe at a little bit. Later stuff, changed styles a bit. And the first couple of albums, Marty, I think you sent me both of these. Looking
I got it
at
from
them,
Zoller, so it's a
they were a Zoller box delivery. Okay, yeah. Just looking at them, it's the kind of thing that a lot of at least American metal fans will quickly flip past. This was the debut album from '83. The band picture on the back is not reassuring you that this is going to scare your parents. This might be something you take home and your mom says, "Oh, what a nice, young group of men," and not the reaction most kids would have gone for. The second album, Power Games from '82 or from '84. Again, the cover just isn't going to make kids, feel like this is something that's going to shout at the devil. It's more like you're going to politely raise your hand in the back of the classroom and ask for the bathroom pass or something. But the albums are actually pretty good. I like both of them. The material is not bad at all. It's just a case of, the packaging isn't helping sell it. But the real thing with 220 Volt on the debut album, there's a really good track called Prisoner of War. And it's not the first time that track showed up. The band had done a 7-inch in '82 before they got the record deal and started putting out full lengths. And there's a different version of Prisoner of War on this.
That's a cool cover too.
Yeah, it's a cool cover. It's very new wave of British heavy metal kind of looking. Just, the black and white, simple drawing. The labels are just stamped. So you can actually kind of, tell where, they just had a, ink stamp that they were making these with. It looks like based on, how some of it's running a little bit. The other track, Sauron, named after the Lord of the Rings villain, of course, isn't on anything else to my knowledge, but they did re-record Prisoner of War for the debut album. The single's a lot heavier than the stuff that's on any of the LPs. And again, while I like the stuff on these, first couple of albums, you could tell, they were drifting, in that more mainstream. I don't think they even get the adult-oriented metal tag that Dan just gave us. I think they definitely were getting into the adult-oriented rock tag, the dreaded AOR for some folks. But the original single, it's very kind of heavy sounding. It's a straight up heavy metal single, and they were good at the change in style too. For folks that don't mind some of their the metal stuff bleeding more into the hard rock side and being a little more mainstream sounding. These are both still very good albums and worth checking out. Some of the albums that came a little bit later tend to get universally panned as getting maybe too weak. I'm not as familiar with the stuff later in their catalog, but I do like the early 220 volt material. And they're definitely a band that seems to have had a bit more output than some of the other bands we're talking about, where maybe they just had one single or a single LP. So yeah, 220 volt is my pick for that round.
There's actually a Overdrive 220 volt story there as well.
Oh, good.
We were actually they had released the single, we had released the first EP, and both of us were trying to get a deal with the label, of course. And what we heard was that CBS was choosing between Overdrive and 220 volt.
Oh,
yeah, and they won. And we were signed by Planet Records.
You should have just drove over there and roughed them up a little bit, and maybe there can be only one. Take them out, Highlander style.
I didn't hear about it until it was too late.
Ah, shit.
Oh, I'll be.
Another way to promote your album. Band kills another band.
Yeah.
That's the way we do it in the US.
Right.
Maybe we should electrocute it.
I wonder if there was a reason. We always hear some of those kind of things, from back in the day, that labels wanted to choose like one band from a particular style or scene. I mean, obviously, I know there's a financial investment involved with signing a band, but I wonder what the mentality was that it was like, we can only sign one Swedish metal band, or that we have to choose one LA early metal band to put onto Chrysalis Records or something. Why were these labels so focused on their we'll pick just one?
There is the classic story of that live gig in London where Angel Witch and Iron Maiden were playing, and the label came to probably signed Angel Witch, but they were so drunk and they signed Iron Maiden instead. I think people are familiar with that story or myth. No, but it probably just comes down to label policies. Like, okay, we need one band in this. It's so much random chance that makes bands turn out. I just want to check a thing. Funny thing, when I got the 220 volt single, I got it from what's his name again? Metal Forces, Dave Constable's stock in his office, and he had actually lots of copies of this, and I got a really weird version which doesn't have a number. It says,
oh wow,
it says SOS Headbang. I wonder what the hell is SOS Headbang. It's not a number. Could have been a magazine. I don't know.
There was some strange things going on with pressings, weird pressings sometimes.
So we have confirmed that it is not a 500 copy. It's at least 501 copies.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I forgot to point that out, Dan, but yeah, my copy is just numbered. Has like a 288 for mine, but yeah, that's
they probably set some aside for radio or magazines or You're not going to give them a number.
Some weird promo version.
Yeah.
I also heard someone told me Jörgen Holmstedt, who is a renowned Swedish writer. He got to know why they were choosing between 220 volt and Overdrive. And one of the reasons was because we had actually released physical records, because they got loads of demos. They didn't even listen to them. And
really?
No, so they thought that these two bands, they've actually put in a lot of money and work to get their stuff out, and they press their own records. So they must be like good people to work with, and they will do like a lot of work themselves to promote and so that's I heard was one of the reasons. I'm not sure it was for the music.
Yeah.
Okay. No, they saw y'all as maybe a step further along in development.
Yeah.
All right. Well, more association games here for me. Dan, plug your ears at the end of this one. So we got Ceremonial Oath, the Book of Truth. This is a collection. It's the Book of Truth full length, and CD2 is all the demos. This band featured Jesper Stromblad, who went on to be in this little band, which for the time, this is my favorite Melodeath, one of my favorite Melodeath albums that come out of Sweden. It's so catchy from start to finish. After this, In Flames started to change into a realm I didn't really want to go, and Jesper took a break and is back in a band called the Halo Effect with members of Dark Tranquillity. But one of the main guys in this is Oscar Droniak. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. After Ceremonial Oath, he started a short-lived band called Crystal Age. This is Far Beyond Divine Horizons. We covered this on the Album Club. Go check out that episode. And shortly thereafter, this is a one-and-done band here. He started this band, Hammerfall, Glory to the Brave. And say what you want about this band and this album. The time this album came out, heavy metal was a bad word. It seems like all over the place.
In the U.S., yes.
In the U.S. in particular. And you just couldn't get people to give a shit about this older, more traditional metal style until this album came out. It's pretty simplistic. You've got which is cool here, there's a Warlord cover on here, which is awesome. Child of the Damned. They did a great job on it. This band ended up kind of rekindling the spark for traditional heavy metal. I don't know how it was in Europe. I'm sure it's always been there in Europe, but America for sure. And the band is still, they toured last year or 2 years ago with Halloween, the whole world. So people still care. They just put out a new album this year that's actually quite good. It's formulaic. It's just a band, putting out maybe the same album time after time, but people salute. It's well done. It's a good formula. So there you go. There's some stuff, some Swedish stuff. What do you think about that Hammerfall, Dan? There it is.
Yeah. For those not in the know, Hammerfall was one of the only bands I think ever banned from discussion at the Corroseum.
That T-shirt was incidentally printed by the infamous Bajsmannen. We were a bit skeptic about Hammerfall when they came out. I'm going to do some backtracking here and stepping back a bit. First, I want to explain why we thought this was so lame when it came out, and then I'm going to do some retractions. Well, I remember when the first album came out, at least for me, it was also around the time when I started rediscovering 80s metal. And the first thing that struck me, and I know that struck a lot of other let's say 50% of our metal friends and 50% loved it, but the other part of us who listened to it, it struck us that this is so over cliched. Yeah, they're doing everything right, but for some of us, it sounded it was so unoriginal, and I never got into the songwriting. For me, it was like they're doing it too easy. And if you compare this to a band like the Lord Weird Slow Feg, who basically started out exactly the same time.
Amazing.
Just saying that.
Well, plus if you go from Crystal Age to Hammerfall, this is super complex.
Yeah.
Like obtuse death metal. It's like insanely technical, and then you go from that to oversimplified. You could tell there was a ulterior motive.
I'm first going to explain our thoughts back then. Was that it sounded so cliche. They covered great bands. I'm a fucking super diehard Warlord fan.
Oh yeah.
But to us, it sounded so cliched and unoriginal. It was sort of like they took the cheap. They cheated. They took the cheap unoriginal way to rejuvenate metal, because even back then there were bands like Lord Slow Feg, like Twisted Tower Dire, and sort of other really better bands out in the underground, growing and sort of rejuvenating this sound. And I remember that. Why can't it? Because I like the idea of rejuvenating this style, but why does it have to be so cliched? And we were really angry at that, and a lot of people make fun of them, and there was a lot of hate. Sitting here today, 2024, I have to be the adult and say that there was. It's pretty cool that they actually they did. I think their intentions were good, and they were pretty diehard about sort of rejuvenating and giving praise to a classic metal sound. To this day, I still never heard one single Hammerfall song, which I think was really that special. But I'm not. I seldom wear this T-shirt nowadays. But I mean.
Sounds like we know a VCLT package to send to Dan.
No, but no, I will give them some credit for intentions, and they meant well. My only problem with this was I thought their songwriting were cliched.
That's fair. Yeah, that's a fair, especially for someone that knew those other bands, like you said, like Slowfag and such,
and other
and you're
bands,
comparing them, and it's
they're
going to lose that.
Better. But they tried and they did their best, and in retrospect, I can respect them for that.
So, having said that, obviously, I think we know the answer here. But why this band then to resonate and kickstart? Slowfag are amazing, but they're always strange, and I don't know if they're going to appeal to a wider audience. Whereas Hammerfall, why them?
Because they were easy. They took the easy way. They were very middle of the road. They did the exact same harmonies and chord changes and songwriting as they were very easy listening. There were nothing grating about them as well. They like Stormwitch, which I never liked much after the two first albums.
Later Stormwitch is weird, but
rough.
They just Hammerfall just seemed to be in the right place at the right time to get the Nuclear Blast deal, and they got the exposure and that got people more interested in checking out the other stuff. So
I want to hear Janne Stark's opinion about Hammerfall and your when they came out.
When they came out, we were like, "This is the same stuff that we did like 15 years ago."
Sure.
Years ago, it sounded like exactly what the stuff that we did in Overdrive in the 80s. It's like, it's cool, but it's nothing new. And like you said, we also felt that they kind of took the easy road. It wasn't anything special. It was classic heavy metal, but they didn't really invent a new wheel or something. I thought it was. But then, when they kind of helped reinvent or increase the interest of heavy metal, I have to give them credit for that, because they got Nuclear Blast to sign them, and they only signed like death metal and black metal, and they signed them, and okay, so it felt like at least they started to pave way for a new wave of metal bands. So I think they. I wasn't too happy with the first album, but they did. They did great, I think, in that sense.
And I saw them. They opened for Halloween. I took my kid down to see them in Michigan. They played Michigan, and I'm not gonna lie, they were really solid. Great shredder guitar player. Not Oscar, but the other guy was shredding. But you're sitting there watching a live set, 4 songs about hammers. And then Oscar comes out at the end playing a guitar shaped like a hammer. I'm just like, oh man. And at the end, he throws his guitar up in the air and almost drops it when he comes down to catch. He almost dropped it. The strap got in the way, and it was like, oof. That was close. Like, I had to have a chuckle at that. But, cheesiness aside, they were solid. They sounded really good, and people liked them. It was fun. It was a fun show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, made a good point about, those labels were not interested in this style of music at all in the mid 90s. We've, had conversations with some of those folks. Those bands were approaching labels like Relapse and Nuclear Blast and Century Media saying, hey, here's our material. We've got a following. And those labels would flat out tell them, like, there's no market for this in the States. We're not going to sign a band like October 31st or Twisted Tower Dire. We can't give this stuff away in the States. Sorry, we're not saying it's bad, but we can't sign you because we can't sell you. But somehow, Hammerfall made it work with Nuclear Blast, and that really opened the gates then for a lot more bands to start to get deals with those labels. So they did a good thing. They just did it in a way that some folks didn't appreciate.
Yep. All right, Janne, you are up.
Yes, this is actually one of my favorite singles. A band that they only released one single, and that's it. They did a demo as well. Actually, did 2 demos, and we've talked about releasing it, and hopefully it comes through. Really love this one, Behemoth.
Oh, that's a great one.
I mean, it's 2 version,
And you got both versions. Nice.
I mean, these guys were like the Swedish version of Angel Witch, kind of style-wise. I mean, this both Death Wings and Vengeance. I really love this single. It's really one of my favorite singles.
Yeah, that's a fantastic one, and another one that we should have had on part 1 and didn't.
Yeah, didn't one of the guys in Behemoth travel to London to play with Angel Witch? Wasn't there a story like that?
I don't know, actually.
No, I heard a story that one of the members of Behemoth were sort of going to London to play as a member of the band. I don't remember where I heard it, but yeah, that's a really cool band. There are some really bad sounding demos have been circulating for ages.
Yeah.
But what I can discern from those shitty sound demos is that the demo stuff is, if someone can find good sounding copies of that, it sounds very doomy. I don't know about you, Janne. What are your takes on have you found good copies of the demos?
I have a copy that is pretty good. It's not as good as the single, but it's actually okay. And I remember I've been in touch with the band, and they also sent me a second demo. But that was the sound quality is great on the second one, but the style is more melodic. It's not as heavy as this, and it's a bit later, so it's not that interesting in that sense. But that demo, I would like to find the original tapes, but that's kind of hard today. I know a lot of we had the same problem with the releases of Gotham City. We were in touch with the studio where they recorded, and they had just threw them away like 5-6 years ago. Like sell them or reuse them. So yeah.
I think the Gotham City demo sounded fairly okay. I think, but I remember specifically that the Behemoth demos were very doom metal-y, because I only have really shitty versions of them, but you can tell that this is even more. It sounded like if the single sounds like the Angel Witch 1980 LP, the demo sounded like Angel Witch 78 demos.
Yeah.
I would like to hear more from that. So I hope you and our Greek friends can sort something out.
Yeah, hope so, yeah.
All right, Dan, you are up.
Yeah. Okay. I had I'm gonna keep going on sort of like the same style or era as Morgana Le Fay, and we're gonna connect to a band we haven't talked about yet, which I'm waiting for you guys to talk about. But now we'll see what happens during the evening. But I'm gonna talk about a little super band called Memento Mori.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
what is Memento Mori mostly famous for? Well, it is because we have a little big guy in the middle there with a puffy hair. Messiah Marklin.
And it's the drummer from Parasite as well, I think.
Oh, cool.
You won.
They released 2 albums. I think this one is both of them was like early 90s. So this was the first band with Messiah Marklin after Candlemass. And I am so surprised that you almost never hear anyone talking about Memento Mori, because this is an absolutely killer, sort of somewhere in between doom metal and really good 90s power metal. It doesn't sound like Candlemass. It is definitely a 90s product, but which is sort of something that I would normally be a bit skeptical about. But I really love this album. It is bloody excellent songwriting. It is it's also like a technical semi-doomy technical doom metal from the early 90s.
Missing link between Candlemass and Hexenhaus.
Not sort of like in a power thrash chugging way, but yeah, definitely more song oriented. And Messiah's vocals are still great. The songwriting is absolutely killer. It's such a surprise to listening to this. I sort of rediscovered this in the last year. I bought it I remember when it came out and probably listened to it for 5 seconds and didn't care about it back then. Bought it on vinyl maybe like 5 or even 10 years ago. And yeah, this sounded cool. Went into the black hole and rediscovered it actually this year. And it really is a really underrated Swedish 90s metal album. And they even did a second one, which I unfortunately don't have. I did a quick listen to it because a friend recommended it, and it's just as good. So Memento Mori, Messiah post Candlemass Messiah Marklin, really great doom / 90s power, which could be, you always expect that when a sort of like semi-famous metal musician starts a new band, it's supposed to be sort of like lame, but it isn't. No, really.
Why isn't he doing more? Really, I mean, he's got the voice. I just seen a video the other day where he jumped on stage with Anvil, and I know. And he still sounds great, and he's such a huge. He's getting the crowd pumped up. I'm like, he still has it. Why isn't he doing something with it?
I'm probably too tired for touring, I guess.
Yeah.
He was to do a thing with the guys from Stillborn as well.
I saw that. Yeah.
But nothing came out of that as well.
I
actually have a Messiah Marklin story from back in the day as well.
Awesome.
We played with Overdrive. Messiah is also from where I used to live before. The area where Overdrive was from, it was Overdrive, Parasite, Interaction, Mercy. We were kind of from the same area. And back then, Messiah played drums. He's an excellent drummer.
Wow.
And he had a band called Rough Lizards. And they opened up for Overdrive. And he played drums. He was a great drummer, great singer. The guitar players totally sucked, but they were great at posing. And we were like watching, and I was like, what the fuck is this? But that drummer singer is great. And then, he joined.
The rest is history.
Mercy just shortly after that. And Rough lizards.
Rough lizards.
That's a rough name.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a record I should revisit myself, Dan. I also heard it when it came out, and it just
I had the
didn't quite
promo for
work
it. I gave
me.
it away. I wish I had it. Yeah.
Yeah, it just didn't quite work for me for some reason. And I think it is that blend of doom and 90s power that I just had trouble wrapping my head around. And it's weird. I've always had issues with Mike Weed projects. I don't know why. He's a good guitarist. But the Hexenhaus material has just never been my favorite. That Memento Mori album was never my favorite. His material with Fate later on is just not my favorite. But it's not his playing that bugs me about any of those albums is the strange thing. There are times I've described as maybe he's a little dry sounding. He has that 90s guitar sound where, it tends to be a little dry at times, but still.
Yeah.
So,
Production wise, it is typically 90s. That problem with early 90s where everything is a bit too clean and there's no.
Yep.
But the difference between that album and a lot of other stuff that was released back then, this is actually great songs, great songwriting, and fairly original, I would say. Really stand out. I would take Memento Mori over even Morgana Le Fay, I think, and a lot of other stuff that came out during that period.
Fair. Yeah. I saw it somewhere not too long ago, and I was thinking like, I should probably give it another try. It's been a long time since I heard it. All right. Let's see. My next one, like Janne's, is another band that did one single and nothing else, but I really like it. I wanted to talk about it on part one, but I don't think they have a big place in Swedish metal history, but it's a cool single nonetheless.
Shakespeare.
It is, yes. It absolutely is. Yep, that's the one. Shakespeare, not the most heavy metal band name, but love the picture sleeve. Again, it's in that new wave of British heavy metal tradition of black and white line drawing, but done really nicely. The back of the sleeve looks really cool too. You've got the songs Orphan Devil and Sneaking Around. Everybody's got. This is the only time in my life I will ever see 3 copies of Shakespeare in one place. But yeah, Orphan Devil and Sneaking Around are the songs, both really good. Shakespeare's kind of easy to describe because they were very much operating in the Merciful Fate kind of style. They've got that rough kind of, sneering, slightly evil, not the high vocal King Diamond, the kind of sinister sounding King Diamond voice is exactly what they went for. And they did pretty well with it. I like the material. The single is on that Pang label that Janne, you were describing earlier as you're not the first person to describe them as not having a great reputation as a label, but it is what a lot of the Swedish singles came out on. And this one came out in 82, so it's kind of early on the scene. But yeah, and I've never seen or heard anything else about the band, which is a shame because I really do like both the tracks on this one. Janne, do you know what became of them, or was there anything else, or did they just kind of completely disappear?
Yeah, they didn't release anything else, and I think we actually even tried to track them down, but I don't have any demos or anything, so no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have
go ahead, Dan.
No, I remember me and Thomas from Helvetes Port, where we were sitting at his place one day, and we sort of like, let's try and find like guys from our favorite singles, and we were looking through internet and like, let's see if we can find Shakespeare. And I think we sort of went through the names of the lineup on the back, and we actually we were basically sitting there like, let's call this guy, and he answered, and we talked. And he's sort of, are you kidding? No, we're not. We're like Shakespeare because you sound a little bit like Merciful Fate, which they do, and we didn't get that. We were sort of curious about if they had any demo tracks or anything, and I remember there were no demo tracks as far as I remember. My only remember is that we don't know what happened to the vocalist. He was the craziest guy ever. He's probably dead now. And I remember maybe a couple of months later, some Greek guy came in contact with me and wanted to release Shakespeare. And I said, yeah, we talked with him over the phone a couple of months ago. And of course, we lost the number and couldn't reconnect.
He probably changed it after that. He's like, what the fuck?
But I remember, I think it was like the guitarist or drummer or whatever we talked with. There were no demo recordings ever made for this.
Wow.
This very small local phenomenon. And there were a couple of other bands we did the same thing with during back then. But for Shakespeare, apparently no demos or anything. So
really
it is a cool single. There are some similarities to the darkness of demo era Merciful Fate. We shouldn't say that this is like total Merciful Fate hell quality, but
no.
It is very it is sort of heavy, or a bit almost semi doomy. But the songs aren't masterpieces, but they are creepy and in a cool way. But for fans of specialized fans of obscure early metal might like it. Mainstream fans will not. Yeah, you know what I mean.
What are you trying to say?
There is
you'll hate this.
No, it's a good point. There is on Metal Archives. There is one single review for the Shakespeare single, and yes, you can tell it's written by someone with that kind of mentality. Because I mean, they just call it like they call it like, what do they call it? It's like a crippled sounding version of Merciful Fate.
Yeah,
and
that is fair. Yeah.
It's a second-rate Merciful Fate, okay, but yeah, then they just kind of proceed to slag on it a bit for no real reason. So, boo to whoever wrote that review.
For second-rate Merciful Fate, I will take over 90% of anything else, basically.
Well, there you go. How many bands really? There weren't a ton of second-rate Merciful Fates that are worth listening to. This one really is.
No.
Can I throw in my Merciful Fate story as well?
Sure. Please do.
Playing with brats.
In 1980, I was in a record store in Copenhagen, and owned by, or actually the guy in the store was Ken Anthony, and he was promoting his new band that he was working with called Brats, and they had just released their LP in 1980. And Michael Danner and Hank Sherman were in the store as well, so we talked to them, and we had just recorded the Overdrive demo, the first demo. We gave them our demo. We started talking, and we like, shouldn't we do like an exchange gig? So Brats come to Sweden and play with Overdrive there, and then Overdrive can come to Copenhagen to play with Brats there. So nice. Yeah, we did that, and so in 1981, Brats came to Sweden. The thing was just that they had changed lineup a bit. They still had Jens on bass and Monroe on drums, and they had Hank on guitar, but there was another guitar player called Karsten, and they had another singer, King Diamond. But they were still called Brats. Yeah, that lineup. And
that is the live show you're talking about.
No.
18th January.
No.
Okay.
It was the March 13. I have 4 songs from actually recorded through the mixer from that show, and there is a video as well. But then the thing is that people were expecting this like punkish metal, and then they start playing like Death Kiss, and people were like, and his falsetto vocals, and we're like, what the fuck is this? But they liked it anyway, so yeah, it was fun. And then the year after, in 1982, we played together with. Then they had changed the name to Merciful Fate, so Overdrive, Merciful Fate, and Silver Mountain played in Copenhagen, and then they had like the same lineup that was on the first Nuns Have No Fun EP as well. But when they played with us, they had just recorded a demo as well, and like I said, we released. See this Overdrive Live in the Raw 1981, and this was actually with that's see, here's the poster that I did for the show, Bratz and Overdrive.
Oh,
Foreign
cool.
hard rock, it says.
Foreign hard rock.
Foreign hard rock. Foreign hard rock with let's see, utländsk hårdrock med ös.
Utländsk hard rock.
Overdrive, special guests, local hard rock.
At least there's no adult-oriented metal in the bill.
So this is the actually the more or less the entire Overdrive show. We actually did an April Wine cover and an Axe cover as well back then. There are some songs that we never released we never recorded in the studio. And the thing is that we didn't even know it existed. But when I was actually going through some of our drummer's old cassettes and demos that he wanted me to digitalize, because before Overdrive, he was in a band called Ocean, and they had some old recordings and stuff. And then I put this cassette in. It was like, what the hell? This is actually, it's Overdrive from this show, recorded from the mixer. So it's a soundboard recording, and it sounds great. And there were actually 4 songs by Bratz as well.
Wow.
So I've only actually sent them to Hank, so nobody else has them. And there was a guy that was filming the entire evening as well. So there's both the Overdrive show and the Bratz show are filmed. But I've been trying to get that video for about 25 years. I've got it here somewhere. So yeah, hopefully someday.
Yeah.
Important shout out. Bratz are reforming for the Metal Magic Festival in Denmark.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, I freaking love the 1980 Bratz album. I think it is a 10 out of 10 killer hard rock album with punk influences, and I have a bit of a punk history, so I love the Bratz album. So I'm planning to go there. Hopefully. What about you, Janne?
Hopefully, yeah. I think I will too. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, let's go more associations. We've got In the Embrace of Evil by Grotesque. I don't know if this is mentioned the last time. Obviously, you've got Necrolord, who went on to be a renowned artist in the metal scene. Also, he was in this chaotic, hard-hitting Liars in Wait album or
Liars
EP.
in Wait, yeah.
Yep, Spiritually Uncontrolled Art, that's perfect breakdown of what this band sounds like. It's so complex and just it's hard to listen to. The melody is like no melody, just brutality. And of course Thomas Lindberg from At the Gates. He went on to be in At the Gates. Obviously, Thomas was a huge underground enthusiast, big tape trader. He got around. He's been in a bunch of different bands. Of course, At the Gates is the biggest of those. Yes, and put out a bunch of records, reformed, all that good stuff. And I just want to talk about Grotesque. They were probably a good mix of death and black metal, leaning more towards the black metal side. Just really aggressive, excellent early stuff. It inspired a bunch of different bands, and obviously At the Gates took off, and that's kind of the way that went. But yeah, you guys have any thoughts on Grotesque?
Yeah, I like the Grotesque one.
I think
Necrolord, that's Christian Bolin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
He lives about 5 minutes from here.
Right. What were you gonna say, Dan?
No, I picked the At the Gates mini for the last stream. Grotesque, that Grotesque mini is really cool. The At the Gates mini I love even more because it was that's where this their ideas really coalesced into something super unique and groundbreaking.
Really weird guitar playing early on. Yeah.
And I remember also the Lies and Wait. I had the original mini CD Lies and Wait when it came out because it was sort of related to these bands. don't have it anymore, unfortunately. Totally crazy sounding start stop prog def before prog def existed. But no, the first At the Gates mini is a huge fave. Hype that one on the last stream, and of course. Grotesque was a progenitor of that sound, and one of the big early ahead of their time Swedish death metal bands.
Right on. All right, Janne, it's back to you.
Yeah, and this is a band, and this is a band that has really eluded me. I've tried to find the members. I've been searching for these guys for so many years. Don't know if you've come across them, Dan, but this single is also one of my favorite Swedish metal singles.
Oh, that one's awesome. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. No information. Haven't found
Completely
any of
blank.
the members. And it's such a great single. Classic heavy metal. Flying on the Sundown, Lost in the Forest, on the Latina label. Yeah, just a classic piece of metal. And anybody out there knows anybody in that band, get in touch. Never seen any or heard of any demos or anything with this band. Never heard of any member joining any other band. So kind of a mystery. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I remember when I finally got a copy of that, I was just excited to see what info was on the back of the sleeve. Like, hey, there'll be a little more info about them. That was a disappointing day.
No, I don't have any info about that band. I got it from what's his name, the Solna record store guy, and eventually traded it away for the Black Virgin 7-inch in the early 2000s. Yeah, it's a cool Swedish metal single, but no, it seems to be kind of a mystery band. Never even heard about anyone having stories about connecting with the band. Unlike people have connected with bands like Jackwave and stuff like that, but never Depth Zone. No.
Wow.
All right, Dan.
Okay. What should we do? Yeah. Since you guys are being lazy and I'm sort of waiting for you to bring the cat out of the box, you can still do this band. I'm going to talk about a classic band which we sort of almost started with in the last stream. But I'm going to be a bit specific. So if you want to talk about this band later, please do so. I'm going to come back to one of Sweden's greatest sons, which is Candlemass.
Okay.
I didn't pick any because I figured it was talked about last time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fail. No,
Mm-hmm.
but on the last stream, we talked about both me and Aaron talked about Candlemass. I'm going to do a little, just to mix things up a bit. I'm going to talk about some later Candlemass stuff because we hyped Epicus, Doomicus, Metallicus, and Nightfall and Ancient Dreams on the last stream. The thing about Candlemass is they were a band that kept releasing killer albums even after their heydays. So I'm going to do a little about their sort of post-millennial era. The first reunion album with Messiah was the self-titled just Candlemass, the White Album, with the song Black Dwarf, which everyone loves. I think Black Dwarf is one of the weakest songs on this album. The rest of the album is much better. This is sort of like, for me, this is like I don't know, Metallica Black Album's Enter Sandman, where I fucking hate Enter Sandman and enjoy the rest of the album. Black Dwarf is okay. The rest of the album is much better. It is a great comeback album for Candlemass in 2006, I believe. Unfortunately, this was the only album where Messiah played. Candlemass is one of those Swedish bands which I've seen probably the most times. So I caught them on this tour. But then he went away, and then we had what's his name? The guy from
Robert Lowe.
Robert Lowe, exactly. Robert Lowe.
He did a great job on that record.
Oh yeah,
especially the last song, "Embracing the Sticks." Or oh my
Embracing the Sticks.
Oh, yeah. so good.
Robert Lowe was an absolutely awesome vocalist. I like him so much more in Candlemass than in Solitude Eternus. And I've been a Solitude Eternus fan since their demo days. But in Candlemass, he was great. Unfortunately, there were some problems with him learning the lyrics. There are some classic jokes about, I mean, when he played live, he sort of needed to have a little the lyrics in front of him, and there were some problems with the live shows back then because he couldn't learn the lyrics and everything, and things got confused. But his voice was amazing, and my favorite later era Candlemass album will forever be actually King of the Grey Islands.
It's a great record.
Yeah, this is, I would say, after the three first ones, this is my favorite. It is an absolute killer comeback, or you know what, when classic bands do records in the 2000s, I very seldom give a fuck, but Candlemass did a lot of really great stuff. And this one, there's so many cool tracks on it. I mean, Edgar Gray, Embracing the Sticks, as you said, Emperor of the Void, Clear Sight might be one of my top 5 favorite Candlemass songs ever.
Yeah.
There is a bonus track on the vinyl version, which is not on the CD, which is called Edgar Gray, which is like the second best song here. And there are this really slow and doomy stuff, you know, like slow doom stuff like Demonia 6 of Stars and Smoke. Very diverse album, an absolute must buy. They continued with Deathmatic Doom after this, which was almost as good, a bit more even. Still great. This is one of those albums I can put on and totally enjoy. I don't think there's any particular highs or lows on this one, but I like it a lot more than, I would say this is the last Candlemass, the last great Candlemass album. They have done one or two after this one, which I personally were never a big fan of. But the last great one is Deathmatic Doom. A cool little parenthesis in between that is that they made a little EP. Candlemass' very own Hauntingly Chapel or Judas Maxi or whatever you want to call it. They made a little EP called Lucifer Rising. An exclusive EP song. This track, Lucifer Rising, is an absolute killer power metal track. Lucifer, Lucifer, Lucifer Rising. Yeah. One of Candlemass' most underrated tracks. And even the track White God is killer. And they couldn't do it as the way that band did it back in the day, releasing a maxi with 3 songs. No, they had to do like a double maxi with a full length.
Yeah, it was like what live stuff.
Various bonus crap, but get this one for the Lucifer Rising track is really cool as well from this same era. So just me giving a little shout out to post-millennial Candlemass, which I think is really underrated, with Robert Lowe on vocals. Really great era of this band. So if you want to do Candlemass records, please do. This is just me doing a parenthesis.
Oh, good call.
For hardcore Candlemass fans, there's actually a connection between Candlemass and my previous band, Grand Design. Lars Johansson, the guitar player of Candlemass, before Candlemass, he was in a band called Macbeth that featured the singer that is now in Grand Design. They just do demo tapes, like 8 songs or something, and it's kind of Scorpions style, late 80s melodic metal.
Mm-hmm.
He was a killer guitar player already back then, so yeah, it's a solid demo actually.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, Alan.
All right, let's see. This band, their names popped up a couple of times, and I had it on the stack. So yeah, just another example of a band that, this band got 2 singles instead of just one. It is Jackwave. This is the first single, King of the Sea, with I'll Be There. And this one is another one on the Platina label, which was also discussed a bit earlier. So yeah, this single leans a bit more melodic, but it's very good, extremely sing-along in structure, but very fun, catchy tunes for both of them. I'll Be There has more of a ballady quality to it, but actually a good one. It's not super sappy. It's not going to. You say ballad in 80s, and people sometimes jump to certain conclusions, but I'll Be There is actually a really tight song. So yeah, this was one that I remember for a while was kind of unknown. It got some exposure. Dan, there was a lot of chatter about this one. Yeah, like you said, when people were being contacted from the band, it was talked about a lot on the Corroseum and stuff. And so yeah, stuff came out about the second single, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they had the compilation treatment as well in 2020. So you don't have to track down an old Platina single to check out Jackwave. You can absolutely get the compilation that was put out, and that makes the material a lot easier for a lot of folks to track down. But yeah, I've always liked this one. Was lucky enough to get it in a trade. Actually, I don't remember if I got this in a trade or if somebody sold it to me. I'd have to go back and check my notes. But regardless, a friend over in Sweden had it, ended up with a copy, made it available to me, and we worked it out. But yeah, just another really good single by another really good band from that early scene. This one came out in 85. I want to say 85. Am I off by a year? 86. 86. I'm off by 1 year on that one. But yeah, Jackwave. Very cool band. Kind of, later in that first wave of Swedish heavy metal.
All right, I'm going down the common path here as usual, but my 2 favorites from this band, the demo by Catatonia, and Dance of December Souls. This is when the band was a doomier version of black metal, really highly melodic. They just felt a bit different from everything else that was going on in Scandinavia at the time. They had a touch of black metal added to it. The demo is really cool. First version of Without God, really, really good song. And then I'm also going to show that there's been a lot of different projects that have oh my God, Blackheim's black metal band. I can't remember the name of it. Start with
Diabolical Masquerade.
Diabolical Masquerade, that's right.
Yep.
But this is probably the one that took off the biggest. You got Bloodbath, Breeding Death, which has Dan Swano in it, which I think was mentioned in the last one as well, as being the main composer for Edge of Sanity. And the reason why I wanted to bring Dan up was his contribution to the entire Swedish scene through his engineer and producer activities with, I think his studio started out being called Gory Sound, and then it went to Unisound. And he produced all the bangers from death and black metal, from Marduk to Dissection to, all of his stuff, of course, leading from proggy to death metal, all his activities. He's a very active producer, and it also bears to mention there's also Peter Tägtgren from Hypocrisy, which I'm going to show this to you. I'm talking about it. I might as well talk about it now. Hypocrisy, and also all the Hypocrisy members switched instruments, did black metal, tried to sound like Marduk a bit. But Peter was well known for the Abyss Studios, which also focused largely on black metal, but there was a bunch of other stuff, bigger bands as well, anywhere from Dimmu to Immortal, all those stuff. And then Thomas Skogsberg, which we did not mention. So there's, in my mind, he did all the classic Swedish death metal sound was kind of him, and his really punchy drum production, which come to find out is a D drum set, which kind of blew my mind a little bit. But you got three very big producers, and there's a whole bunch of others as well. But in my world, those were the three guys that were putting out stuff, recording stuff. They were kind of the sound of Swedish metal at the time for me. So yeah, that was a long roundabout way. I covered some ground. Hopefully I didn't step on anybody's toes with stuff. Or
no. You're not going to.
Dan is actually he had this project called Unicorn.
Yeah, the prog band.
And he's a huge fan of Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually sings on one song on one of my Mountain of Power albums.
Oh, nice.
I did a cover of the Canadian band Moxie, and he sings on that one. And he's a very versatile singer, from really clean stuff to evil sounding growls.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about Dan Svane, whatever you say, the greatest Dan Svane project will forever be
Stygg Død.
the Stygg Død demo. Stygg Død means nasty death. This was actually, to this day, my favorite sort of joke death metal band ever. A sort of a project with Dan Svane made in the early 90s with the intro Die Metal Corpse. I'm going to translate it because it's all in Sweden. Satan's ghost eating planks, violent scariness, Satan is my dad, splash in blood, Satan's post box, the devil is the best, welcome to hell, Satan's ghost, etc. The best metal, death black metal parody recording ever, but only for Swedish listeners, unfortunately. So you're all missing out. But no, Stygg Død, that would forever be the best Dan Svane recording.
I would really
he also released the Ghost album.
What?
He also released the Ghost album.
Yeah, he had a band called Ghost, right?
Yeah. He and his brother.
Yeah.
Way before Ghost.
My favorite thing he ever did, he only did one song for it, but it was on a split 7-inch with Infested called a band called Dark Side with a C, Dark C.
Yeah.
It is the heaviest, most brutal, just low crushing death metal with some cool evil keyboards at the end. And it kind of reminds me of where he went with the song Eaten off of the Bloodbath album. Similar type of brutality. It's just crushing. He's just great musician. Great musician.
Yeah. Apart from that, actually, I was going through my CD collection and wanted to pick out the Pandemonium CDs.
Oh, yeah.
Turns out, for some reason, I have sold off all 3 CDs. It was a band that I really freaking loved in the 90s and early 2000s, but I had decades of spring cleaning has resulted in me not having the Pandemonium CDs anymore. I would need to buy them again, I guess. But
it's all been reissued on vinyl.
Yeah. Especially, actually, the third one, which was released on Relapse, is the best one.
Yeah,
which was from '97. I need to rebuy those. Great band.
I was going to say
Great
when Marty didn't include Panthymonium in the Dan Swano family tree, that
I can grab
the
the records real
Panthymonium fans
quick
are they're yelling at their computer, and then Dan
Sold.
turns around and mentions them and says he sold them all. So now
Hold
they're just
on, damn
throwing
it.
things at their computer.
I still have the original Pandemonium demo though for some reason, but not the CDs. But no, progressive death metal before progressive death metal was a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, that band's always had a good cult following. It was another band that some folks after the fact mentions is like, really? You guys aren't going to talk about Panthymonium in the Swedish Metal show? It's like, we can't fit in everybody. Just doesn't work that way.
Well, now we have.
Marty's off to round them up, it looks like. But let's see. While Marty's looking for those. There he is.
All right.
Oh,
Wagner will not forgive you if you don't show these, Marty.
I don't know. Like I said, I just kind of reissue. Dawn of Dreams. Chaos. And the one Dan was just talking about. It is really quite good.
yeah.
Great shit.
Still have the original demo, but not the CDs.
Right.
Why?
Yep. Very good shit.
Oh yeah, so cool. And they do not sound like progressive death metal. They sound like weird Italian avant-garde prog meets death metal. They do not sound like progressive death metal.
Right. And this is one instance where saxophone doesn't bother me too much in music. I'm not a big fan of saxophone.
Saxophones with water in it.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah. They had a saxophone and filled it with water.
Mm.
The only way to make it sound good.
Yeah.
All right. Janne, here we go.
Yeah. This is a band that's they released 2 singles, but actually the demos are better than the singles. But I'm gonna show them anyway. Stitch.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
This one is quite horrible. It's more poppy kind of stuff. This one is really good, but the all the old demos I think is way better than the single. Because I mean, this band they've recorded so much demo stuff, and it's actually they had a bunch of different members, and I even have some demos where Ian Haugland of Europe plays drums as well. But they're the demos. I can really recommend this one. It's Cult Metal that released this one as well, and it's the CD is a double CD with all the demos. So it's hundreds of tracks, but
wow.
And they started really early on in like really the early 80s, and they recorded a lot of stuff that's really good. The funny thing is when they were out touring, they had a management that tried to sell them at any cost, so they actually put out an ad where they called it a rock and roll and snake show. And the audience was like, and they said it was an American band. And I mean, the singer is American, Bob. So he had to do all the talking. And they said that the snake had unfortunately got stuck in customs. So they couldn't bring it to the show.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. But but that's it is a really cool band. And I didn't care too much about the single, but when I got all the demos, it was like, yeah, they should have released a lot of that stuff on the single instead.
No, it is good.
Louise, make love to me, please, and set my mind at ease. Yeah, that's a live recording with them, which is really cool. Yeah.
I'm still tickled by the fact that Dan and his buddy just started cold calling bands from 30 years ago saying, hi, interrupted his dinner.
It's kind of the same type of reaction that I got when I did the first book. I called a lot of these bands that only released one single, and it was like, is this a prank call?
Yeah.
And some guys were like, yeah, it was me, but I don't want to talk about it. And they, yeah,
Mhm.
and some were, yeah, they didn't want to know about it at all, and it was a lot of different types of reactions, and actually some bands reunited just because of the book and because they kind of people were interested in their old stuff, and they didn't even know that their old singles sold for hundreds of dollars. So
Mhm.
that was yeah, interesting reactions sometimes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yep, indeed. Yeah, years ago, a friend of mine who's a collector in Sweden emailed me. He says, like, can you make a phone call for me? And it's just like, obviously, that's a really weird question. But yeah, he was trying to track down a band from the 1980s that had recorded in North Carolina. And he knew I lived in a Carolina. So he figured, well, it's probably all the same. So he's like, yeah, he's like, here's the name, here's the number. I'm pretty sure this is the guy that was in this band that made
I'm
this one
pretty
single.
sure.
I'm pretty sure. He's like,
That's
it
always
probably
confidence.
is. The pieces line up.
Was it Christian who asked you for a favor?
It was Christian. Yep.
Yeah.
Cheers to Christian if he's watching. He probably is. But yeah, so I helped him try to track down somebody, and it was at. I could never get the guy on the line, so I left messages several times trying to explain what was going on. So yeah, I don't know if that ever worked out. Christian eventually did get a copy of the record, but I don't think he got it from the guy. I'm not sure the guy ever got back to him. So yeah, and I've known other collectors and dealers who do that same kind of thing. They just start hitting the phone book, and some people will talk your ear off about their old band. Other people have found religion and want nothing to do with their evil satanic band from the 80s, and every reaction in between.
Or got screwed over by somebody when the band was happening and just pissed off still about it.
Yep, that's a big thing too. Yep, you can get all kinds of crazy reactions.
All right, Dan.
It's me. Yeah. I think it's going to be really hard by now to keep some sort of a red thread, because we're going from 70s to rare 80s singles to death metal back and forth. I'm not going to try to keep a red thread. So I'm going to actually bring up an album and also a concept, a phenomenon related to this album. I'm going to pick out a compilation album, and then we're going to talk about the source of this compilation album, because the compilation isn't that special. But Rockbox. We cannot have a Swedish metal stream without talking about Rockbox. Well, let's first talk about the Rockbox compilation. This is a comp from, I think, 1989, with demo recordings of Swedish bands sent in to the Swedish national radio metal and hard rock show Rockbox. Let's talk about the record first. Some of the cool stuff you have, cool stuff where we have some familiar bands like Keen Hugh, Pagan. Mortality was a really cool, like, Bay Area style thrash band which never released anything apart from demos. Landslide, which are absolute shit on this compilation, but has some really cool demos. Hatred with Temple by Violence. Hatred were one of Sweden's greatest 80s thrash bands. Only released 2 demos. Never got to release an album because they were from fucking Sweden. So they couldn't. And of course, Sorcerer, Born with Fear, the Swedish very Candlemass influenced band who did a couple of demos and eventually albums and cults, reunion shows and whatever. So a really cool Swedish demo only compilation. But the reason I grabbed this album,
the Butts are on there as well, aren't they?
Who?
The Butts.
Yeah. Tell me more about them later. I want to talk. The reason I grabbed this.
They took a better name later on, Red Rocket.
Makes me think of Cartman and South Park. No, but the reason I grabbed this compilation is, of course, just to give me an excuse to talk about the radio show which was behind this compilation. We had in Sweden a couple. I mean, there were hard rock shows before, but on Swedish national radio there was one show which everyone in my generation tuned into, and it was the show called Rockbox, which recorded I think every I don't remember which day of the week, but every week.
Thursday, I think it was.
I think I think it was from like 83 or 84 up until 89.
Yeah.
And this radio show sort of, I mean, it's such a stalwart for my generation. It's formed our it was so important for all metal fans in Sweden back in the 80s. Both, I mean, the cool thing was that they had a couple of like Swedish demo stuff, but they were also our introduction to I mean, of course they did a lot of mainstream stuff and everything, but I mean for me, when I was like 13, 14, 15 years old, that show was the first show where I heard like, even like Running Wild, Agent Steel, Slayer, Possessed, all these speed thrash bands, and even like great traditional metal bands. It was a very important media outlet for phenomenon for metal fans in Sweden in the 80s, and I just want to give some credit to Rockbox. And there is actually a blog. I mean, this is mostly for whatever Swedish people might be watching this stream. There is a really great blog where a friend of mine has compiled all the track lists of all the shows, every single show.
Oh, nice.
Rockbox.
Wow.
And there are ways, this is a bit sensitive, but there are ways that you can actually listen to the shows as well. That's as much as I dare to discuss it, but check out the blog. If you just Google Svensk Hårdrocksradio, Swedish Hard Rock Radio, you will find the blog and you can go from there, and there might be ways that you can get to listen to your old favorites shows. So, Janne Stark, what do you think about Rockbox? What is your relation to Rockbox?
I was glued to the radio every Thursday. I think it was at 8 o'clock or something. And never missed it. Always sat there with the tape recorder ready to record.
Yep.
Yep. And I still have a lot of those demo recordings. Some of those bands I actually never even found the demos after that. I know there was one band called Buddha Band. There was actually on that show I heard Zanity, Time Out of Mind.
I remember. Yeah.
And I recorded that, and I spent 10 years trying to find out who these guys were, and I wore that tape out until I found them later on. But that was that radio show was so important.
All right, Alan.
Oh, yeah, very cool stories. We everyone that grew up in that generation did that. I think where you're sitting there with the tape recorder waiting, they'll start play a song. You have to hit the record button immediately. Then you realize it's when you've already recorded, so you got to stop and back it up and get ready for the next song to come on.
Yep.
I spent a lot of Friday and Saturday nights doing that with college radio stations. Yep. All right, I want to move out of some of the early first wave of Swedish heavy metal stuff for the last few things that I'll show. And we mentioned at the beginning, Marty, you brought up the fact that, kind of, the second wave of kids, when you got more into, the middle and late 80s, started to, develop a new scene in Sweden, with heavier, darker music. And, one of those transitional bands that's become notorious for reasons after the fact was this one, Morbid. This is a compilation of stuff called Year of the Goat, 1987. Just it's a year when they were particularly active in recording stuff. So, and by recording stuff, I mean just demos and things like that. There wasn't any tons of original output or anything. So it's a really nice set. There's a good book that comes with it that talks about the history of the band. The band is now remembered mainly because Peter was the vocalist who would later move over to Norway and be known as Dead and sing during a very formative stage in Mayhem's career. But this is him back in Sweden, hanging out with his original band Morbid and doing stuff. Musically, of course, it's what you'd expect. It's pretty primitive. It's kids recording demos and stuff. It's certainly not without its charm, though. I kind of enjoy the recordings. It's got a reputation, yes, as being sort of this early prototype black metal. Where Sweden was some bands, of course, were doing the Europe thing, but other groups of kids were wanting to do the heavier, darker, follow the Bathory kind of pathway thing. But even on here, they're still showing a sense of humor. And like Dan, I can't remember if you and I mentioned this in the first stream, but like there's this song that there's at least one or two versions of on here called Disgusting Selma.
La 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 la.
Yeah.
And the song title, like to someone that doesn't know anything, just like when I first got this and saw them, just like, okay, Selma is a female name. So it's like, oh, this is going to be a song about some kind of like, really nasty, woman from the scene or something. But that's not what it's about at all, is it?
No, it's a pastry.
Yeah, it's some kind of pastry that apparently is, a European thing that is not a thing to...
It's semla.
Semla. Okay. Yeah. So to folks on this side of the pond, it just looks like the female name Selma, but listening to it, you pretty quickly figure out that this is not that meant to be a serious song, and it's definitely not about a person. So again, they're kids, they're doing just goofy stuff at this time, but they do start to pave a way. There's a few bands around this time, well, with Morbid being one example, where they're starting to transition to a darker and much heavier sound than what had been done in Sweden through the first half of the decade, with the clear exception of Bathory, of course. So I thought this would be a good one to show, just as kind of a transitional point in Sweden's metal history. Dan, I think you showed one of the other bands in stream one. You didn't show Morbid, but
I think we had when we had our evil metal stream, I talked about Obscurity.
That's where it was. Okay, so it was that show. Yeah, I was thinking it was Obscurity, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, which are still today one of my favorites from the sort of 86, 87, before Stockholm Metal Syndrome days. And also, and in the last stream, I talked about Merciless as well. But of course, there are so many legends about about Morbid, and Pelle going on stage with cutting out like death runes. What's the English word for it when you send in an article to the magazine of people dying?
Obituaries.
This story of him, like cutting out all of these obituaries and pinning them on himself, and all these things about very, very problematic stories about him, doing things with pets, which we won't talk about on YouTube because of internet, which would sour the mood of tonight. But Morbid were they were sort of like Creative Destruction, Sodom, but more evil, mainly because of the vocals, which were fucking crazy.
In associations, you had LG Petrov on drums for a while. I don't know.
Probably. I used to have like 2 original copies of the Morbid demos, and both of them I sold way too cheap. I should have kept one, but no, too bad.
Alrighty then. I guess
Yep.
I'm up next.
You're
I'm
up
doing
next.
an association thing, but they're whittling down a little bit here. Repugnant, Epitome of Darkness. This is killer death thrash, I guess you'd call it. These guys are always I heard I had copies. I had like 10 copies of the Draped in Cerecloth demo I sold in the distro, and they sold before I could keep one, take it off and keep one. So I'm kind of bummed because that was really a killer demo. But what is the big deal about this is the main guy that left this started the band Ghost, Tobias Forge. He was known as Mary Gore or Gura.
Mary Gore, Gary Moore, Mary Gore.
Oh shit, you're right. Yeah. Gotcha. Yep. Perfect. I would have never sorted that out. But so yeah, he Ghost, the popular super humongous stadium band that took anonymity and masks and really appealed to metalheads' love of mystery and made it a cult rock thing. Ripped off a bunch of Blue Oyster Cult riffs and anyway, I'm not gonna go there. But yeah, his roots were very much in the Swedish death / thrash scene, putting out some pretty killer evil stuff.
Yeah, that's a good album.
I did an interview with Tobias before his identity was known. I knew his identity, and I did a review of the first Ghost album, and I put his name in there, and the labels asked me not to put the name in there. So I said, yeah, okay, if I can do an interview with him. So I did an interview for Fuzz magazine, a guitar magazine that I was writing for, and he told me that actually the story was that it was Repugnant that became Ghost, but because they didn't want to be confused with Repugnant because the style was so different, that is why they took on the aliases and the masks and everything, because they didn't want to be playing Ghost stuff and people were like, oh, could you play a Repugnant song?
Yeah.
So he said that was actually the basic reason why they took on the identities. And he also said that one of the main influences wasn't actually Blue Oyster Cult, but Demon.
Oh, okay.
You listen to the Night of the Demon. I mean, that's kind of the same.
Makes sense.
Melodic, looking very evil, but sounding very melodic.
Yeah. Yeah, I would never have thought of that, but that does make sense.
Yeah, a friend gave me their first album when it came out, and I was listening to it. I'm like, I hear like Blue Oyster Cult vibes on this, and I'm like, it's good. Just don't care. I'd rather listen to BOC, I guess. But anyway.
Yep. Yeah, guys. Since we're starting another round, but we're at the 3-hour mark. Do folks want to do like 1 or 2 more rounds? Just making sure.
I have lots of stuff.
Okay,
Sure.
just making sure we've got stuff for like another round or 2. But yeah, by that point we'll be getting past 3.5 hours. So probably let's aim for 2 more rounds.
2 more, yeah. Okay, I'll do. Actually, the singer of this band has been mentioned before. Not his name, but a band that he was in. And this is a single that's kind of been flying under the radar as well. I don't think many people know about it. The band is called Insight. And the singer is Christer Åsell, who sang on the first 220-volt single.
Oh.
And this is a really good metal single. This is classic heavy metal. It's from 1988, and it's on a label called Active Music. There were a bit of Aces, and I think Motherload as well was on that label in the beginning. And don't know how hard it is to find that one. I don't see it out much. I don't think many people know about it. But Lay Down, Stay Down, We're Gonna Be in Town Tonight are the 2 songs. Highly recommended. A bit obscure. Don't know if you've heard it or what do you think of it, Dan?
I do not. The very fact that I actually kept it on the 707 inches of steel list means that I would probably have checked it off as a sort of metallish, but I don't remember what it sounded like. Really, that is seriously one of those I haven't listened to in decades. I don't remember much about it, but since I kept it on that list means that I somewhere in time had decided that it is sort of metallic at least. Can't say anything intelligent about the music now.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
It's me, right?
You're
it is you.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So if we're having sort of like a countdown to wrapping up,
Are you going to do the final countdown, Dan?
Oh, you asshole. Doo-doo-doo-doo. That's in my head now for a week.
so
Thank you.
cheap. Alan? No. One of the definite must mentions. We're gonna go to the 2000s and the last decade here, and talk about a really fun, really really unique Swedish band, which I realized we have to talk about on the Swedish Metal stream, which I love the fact that this band exists, and it was made in Sweden, but it does not have a Swedish theme at all. It has a theme of Eastern metal. The band Terminal is a Swedish band who pretends or wishes they were a band from the Iron Curtain, behind the Iron Curtain in the 80s. The band Terminal started out in maybe 10 years ago, released 2 singles and a 12-inch EP, and eventually, actually this year, I think, this year they made a compilation of all their releases, the 2 7-inches and the 12-inch, on a Kompilatski album. No, this is a Swedish band singing in pretend Slovakian. And this is, I just love the fact that the
Pretend Slovakian.
yeah, I love that the band Terminal exists in our lives. This is a legacy of. We have this little fan club in Sweden where a lot of us love Eastern European metal. And these guys, there are a couple of guys from Enforcer, and there are some guys from Antichrist and Tyrann and some other bands. They formed this band, I think, around 10 years ago, released two 7-inches, a 12-inch. Sold out very quickly, and then they made this a compilation album. But the concept was that let's try to sound exactly like a lost, forgotten Slovakian or Czechoslovakian or Polish or Russian or old Hungarian behind the Iron Curtain metal band. And they sing in like totally not made up. I think they sort of like wrote the lyrics and used sort of like Google Translate and sing in some sort of mock Slovakian vocals. I don't know the exact. I might be overdoing it or getting it wrong, but from what I've heard, I mean, I know these guys though do not know the language in which they are singing. But they are very well versed in the metal tradition of these bands from behind the Iron Curtain. So they sound diehard, like stuff like Metalinda or Citron or Pokol Gap or Aria or whatever.
Mhm.
And I just love the fact that this band exists, and the fact that only in Sweden would someone come up with the concept of doing a. I want to be. I want to be from behind that curtain and do East Euro metal, mock East Euro metal. It is. I love it, and the songs are great. Really, is a really great band. They're really great songs. I mean, for those of you out there who love bands like Citron, Cats, Pokol Gap, Aria, all those classic East Euro bands. I mean, Terminal are right up there, right up that alley, and it's very unique concept, and the fact that it was made in Sweden is so crazy. This band never played live, unfortunately. They released this compilation album this year, and it would be pretty cool if it would be like just one-off live show, maybe at, let's say, Muskelrock för fan. Yeah, that would be perfect. But no, really cool band. A much must mention for this stream. Have you guys, Americans, have you heard Terminal?
No, this is new to me.
Okay.
I want to hear the Terminal album where they're pretending that they're behind the Iron Curtain, pretending to be Swedish sounding album. They could probably pull that off pretty well too, I bet, since they are Swedish.
But you know, there's actually a Russian band that is singing in Swedish. What's the name? I know the album is called Kom I min kittel. Come in my cooking.
No, let's not go there.
Well, it's not supposed to be dirty at all. It's actually I can't remember. They are Russian, but they are singing in Swedish, and it's kind of folk metal. I think that band is called something with troll or witch or something like that.
It's like those Japanese D-beat bands who sing in Swedish.
Yeah.
You got to wonder how that comes up at band practice. You know, it was like, hey guys, I've got a new idea. What if we pretended we were from Bulgaria in 1987? What do you think? That had to be a weird sales pitch to make to your bandmates.
Right.
It wasn't a weird sales pitch in Sweden because there are quite a bit of fandom for that sound. So it is cool that it happened.
It is, yeah.
The band is called Svartby, Black Village. Yeah.
All right, Alan.
All right, so I've got two left. I'm going to use one of them on this. Some folks had asked about why we didn't include this band. It's like, yeah, you can only do so many, but they are definitely worth mentioning. From the Swedish doom metal scene, Count Raven. They've had, a good long run of it and always put out solid albums. I always pick Destruction of the Void when I show Count Raven stuff. Like the album a lot. Second album, going for, they had, very much, the kind of, 70s hippie stoner doom look to it. And this album, they really just try to out Black Sabbath. Everything they're doing here is meant to be just, dead on sort of Masters of Reality era Black Sabbath worship, but it's done extremely well.
It is.
So if you like that style, unless you're just one of those people that absolutely refuses to listen to a band that's sort of copying a set style, this is a fantastic album in that vein. Some bands try it and can't really do it, but Count Raven, they really nail it on this one. And they're still going quite well. They had an album come out either early this year or it might have been last year. I forget when the last one came out. But they've been very consistent over the years and still doing quite well. So just want to make sure we get a quick word in for the Count Raven fans who are disappointed that they were not mentioned in part one.
I remember I was tape trading with some Greek guy back in the day who sent me sort of like a fanzine reviews of Count Raven, a band from my home country, sounded like Doom. So I ordered the demos back then in 1990, and I was, this is great, but this sounds so absolutely 100% like Black Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
You have to agree that if there ever, because a lot of doom metal bands always get accused for being, oh, they sound exactly Black Sabbath, but they actually don't. Like, I mean,
Oh yeah.
Pentagram really doesn't sound like Black Sabbath. Candlemass really doesn't sound like Black Sabbath.
No.
Count Raven sounds like Black Sabbath.
Right down to
Yeah.
the vocals.
Yeah,
are
at least on the first
perfect.
album,
Yeah.
the demos. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
the early
that
stuff
was
does.
cool. Yeah, I remember. I got those demos in, I think, 1990, and it was, this is great. But even back then, I realized that this is copycat Black Sabbath.
Yeah. Orchid is another band that does manage to sound exactly like Black Sabbath, but do it very well. But they came much later.
And
All right.
Beastmaker.
What's that?
Beastmaker.
Beastmaker is aiming for that. They have a good pentagram vibe to them also.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Marty.
Well, I'm going to take my second to last one here to cheat a little bit. I haven't shown much of the black metal-ish stuff I've pulled, so I'm going to run through these real quick. Always a favorite, the first 3 albums in particular, Arcanum, Fran Martyr. The main solo guy here, his name's Shamati. I don't remember his real name. I was told that at one point he was a drummer for Grotesque. It's some iteration of this band. I don't know if that's true or not. I try to look it up on the archives, and it just doesn't really confirm that. So anyway, this is real organic.
His name is Johan Lager.
Right on.
It all says, it's in my book.
Right on. Cool. Yeah, I've always liked this stuff. Real organic. He, instead of doing the traditional Satan stuff, he would talk about Pan a lot, and he's got the mask, which when you see a non blurry picture, it looks pretty crappy. So next up, Sethuriel Nord.
Oh,
This was always my favorite of theirs, and this is a reissue. It doesn't have the cover on it, but basically, this is very much in the vein of what I would consider Swedish black metal. What are the differences between Swedish and Norwegian? Norwegian played all 6 strings, very folky sounding. The Swedes, to me, always sounded like more tremolo-based melody, more traditional, just tremolo-based melody lines that you've kind of heard before, but they're very melodic, very good. This is a solid album. Of course, this Sacramentum, Far Away from the Sun. This is an absolute classic. Christian Whalen artwork, Necrolord. Blue, just like Dissection. Sounds a lot like Dissection. They sound like brother bands. But yeah, always loved this album quite a bit. Really well done. In the same searing melody line vein, you've got Slaughter Sun, Crown of the Triarchy by Dawn. The whole Dawn lineup is their releases are excellent. This is a bit long-winded, but very well done. And lastly, this is kind of blackish doom, I guess, but it's a supergroup. Ophthalmia with Via Dolorosa.
Oh yeah.
That is beautiful, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I always love this album. It's got Legion from Marduk singing on it. You've got the main songwriter. You got Emil Nordveit on bass, I believe, and John Nordveit's brother, and Benny Larson from Edge of Sanity on drums. So this is a super group of sorts. That this album ruled. I mean, all their albums are pretty good, but this one stood out for me. Again, long-winded. The bonus, the American version anyway, has a cover of Death Crush, which really didn't need to be on here. But anyway, yeah, there's some Swedish black metal. And I got one more round here, and I'll end it with something a little more modern.
All right.
Janne.
Okay, so my final round then.
Final round. Yep.
So all the 25 records that I have left here.
You can cram like I did. You can cram some in.
I was going to talk about this one.
Yep.
I sent that to you. I remember.
Pardon?
I think I introduced that one to you for the second book.
That could be, yeah. They did a demo as well. This is and also have to just mention this one, Golden Dawn, also on Platina Records. Also really good metal in the same vein as the Insight single. Here's 4 singles that has some interesting members. This one, Horoscope, is so horrible. The guy up in the middle there is Andre Viljaka that was later in Mercy. The guy that formed Mercy, and the guitar player there was in the band Ocean as well. And this one is Andre is singing himself, and he shouldn't be. And, I mean, the lyrics are the corniest. It's kind of hard rock, and the lyrics are the corniest ever. The A side is called "Come to Me," and the B side is called "Gryningen," which means the dawn. And yeah, the lyrics are just horrible.
Vi har varit på rockkonsert några timmar och kanske mer.
Hela natten och kanske mer.
Yeah. No, it's a cult classic. Yeah.
And Highbrow, which features a member that was later in Heavy Load.
Yep.
This is a really good single, I think. Rainfall, that features Björn Lodin, that was later in 6 Feet Under and Baltimore. And it's a pretty good melodic hard rock single as well. And this one isn't good at all, but for all the collectors, it has Ragnar Bolkvist from Heavy Load. It was actually pre-Heavy Load. Tommy McFreeze. It's not good, but for the collectors, you should check this out. Yeah, for the
never seen it.
So yeah, that's also I have to mention this one. This was also a very early. This one is from 1971, but this is a reissue. It was released on a 7-inch single. This is a reissue with 2 songs from the single plus 2 demo tracks from 1971. If you're into November, this is the same style. They were very November influenced. So if you can't afford the original single, which is really expensive, the reissue is well worth checking out. So yeah, I had a bunch more, but
hey, we can save it for part 3.
Yeah, yeah, we need to do that because
holy shit, yeah.
Yep. We can't cover it all, but no, those are cool.
All right, Dan,
what do you want to finish up with?
Yeah, I realized we could totally do a part 3. There are so many good, and funny that Janne brought up Uppåt väggarna. There are so many cool 70s singles as well. Like Great Ad and Alexander Lucas and so many cool ones. I'm a bit at a loss here what I should finish up with. I know there were someone who asked in our last stream that, Dan, show us your Swedish compilation albums. So I'm going to do a little best of with the phenomenon, which wasn't actually a specific Swedish phenomenon, because I know this. There were similar things in the US as well as Europe, where local rock bands sent in their demos. I mean, in the US, you had your radio compilations where bands sent in demos to radio shows, and they eventually made some sort of demo collections for the KXVI whatever homegrown. In Sweden and in Europe, we had our music organizations who released compilation albums, or even budget labels like Pang Records, who loved to release cheap budget compilation albums with any band who wanted to be on a compilation album, who wanted to pay like maybe $100 or whatever, or local compilations where the city funded these compilations. And it is these type of compilations were very popular in Sweden in the 70s and 80s. So there is a treasure trove of little gems of Swedish metal on a lot of these compilations. And if you're gonna be really cocky about it, these are bands that didn't even release demos. So this is as bloody underground as stuff gets. This is not. This is just a representation of. Two set, and of course you have to bring up this three LP triple album from Studio Blekinge. Back from the south. Here we have our friend Janne Stark, of course. With some really very early Overdrive songs, some Mercy songs, which are to this day not re-recorded, and a bunch of other really cool stuff. Triple album released by a local music organization. We talked about Clip Rock with Hells on the last stream. Just local music organization getting money from the city, just released an album. And then we have, stuff like the Pang Records recordings. Pang Records, who released a lot of the Swedish classic cult collectible 7-inches, also had a whole bunch of compilations. And not quite everyone, but most of these compilations had metal tracks as well. And many of these compilations include stuff that I think to this day has some of the greatest Swedish metal songs ever. For instance, Heldags Rockort Far. We have the band Witch, which I think Janne helped to release an album with. Total Angel Witch style metal, which is great. Had this been a 7-inch, it would have been a major collector item. We have stuff like Rock Beast, which was sort of like almost 50-50 metal, mostly primitive stuff. But the greatest song ever recorded on a Pang Records album was the band called IQ Zero. And this is once again one of those bands which we called up. Hey, you guys, you played an IQ Zero on Pang Records, right? Are you kidding? Yeah, I guess we did. Yeah, right. Did you do any demos? No. IQ Zero Murderer is one of Sweden's greatest hard rock songs. The ultimate DIY youth cafe. If you're gonna want to do an archetype of youth cafe garage metal internationally, like really true homely underground metal, IQ Zero Murderer, one of my favorite Swedish metal songs ever. Once again on Pang Records.
IQ Zero.
There's so many. And we have Drag utan droger, Groove without drugs. This is the first metal LP from Sweden. Now, I mean, I'm not saying that to trigger you, but the cool thing about this one, this is a compilation from 1981. It does feature a really primitive garage band called The Duke. The Duke sounds like demo Iron Maiden Killers. There were no demos. There were no 7-inches in 1981, which were this heavy. I'm not saying that's absolutely brilliant or everything, but the Duke tracks on this 1981 album were the heaviest and most metal thing available on vinyl in 1981. I would say this is the first vinyl appearance of new wave of Swedish heavy metal, which was 100% metal, 0 70s influences. Were they great? Yes, they just happened to tread that little zone. But 1981 total Armenian killer stuff, which is so weird. It's a Stockholm local youth cafe recording, but it's super brutal for being 81.
Cool.
And more of that. But no, I'm seriously gonna finish with weird shit because I love weird shit because Corroseum. So sorry for ranting and going on a bit, but
It's all good.
It's all good.
My all-time favorite Swedish rock album will forever be Girls and Boys Helges 87. And some people might know why I worship this one. As I said, we had a little phenomenon in Sweden where we had a lot of city support for young kids forming rock bands and forming study groups and having rehearsal spaces and teaching kids to play instruments and hey kids, well, let's try out and play some rock music and sometimes the guys in these organizations thought that, well, let's release a full album with even the younger kids who are like from 9 to 13. Most of the times when that happened, they had some sort of like guidance to, well, this is how you record a rock song, and this is how you play and everything. In this case, no one guided them at all. Girls and Boys Helges 87 is the Sweden's ultimate outsider recording ever. The A side of Girls and Boys Helges 87 is about half a dozen bands of kids, grade school kids doing hard rock, disco, synth, goth, metal, and no one teaching them how to do it. No holds barred. It is the ultimate Swedish outsider recording ever, and it is most in metal circles and in our very little small circle of people who appreciate incredibly strange metal. This album is famous for including the song Secret Metal, the band Secret Metal, with the song. I'm gonna see if I can have the band lineup shot there. Yeah, Secret Metal.
All right.
A Cop.
Yep.
The greatest incredibly strange metal song ever from the 80s. 11-year-olds doing metal their own way. It's so stumbling, so weird, and I love it to death. And the metal song is not even the greatest song on this album. This is full of weirdness, but the weirdness is sort of off topic. A lot of this weirdness is off topic for this stream, but if you're going to talk metal, Secret Metal, The Cop, it is on YouTube. Just go out on YouTube, Google Secret Metal, The Cop, and you will realize why I love this album.
I'm going to write it down. Okay,
Yeah.
I will forget.
Like a metal version of the
long rant. Sorry, guys, but I have to talk about Swedish local compilations phenomenon and tie it into Helges. Yeah.
All right. You have something to add to that, Janne, before we move to Alan?
I just said it sounds like the explanation sounded like it would be a metal version of the Shags.
Yeah. It is metal Shags. Totally.
Have you, Alan, Marty, have you heard the Shags?
No.
No, I don't know that one.
Of the world. Google them. The world will not be the same after you've heard them. They are, if
this is the metal version of the Shags, by the way.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely Google the Shags. My Friend Foot Foot.
My friend Foot.
They are three sisters that learn to play without anyone teaching them. And their father thought that, well, it would be a good idea to record an album. And they sing and play in 3 different tempos and different keys. It's fucking chaos, but it's you have to hear it to believe it.
Yeah. Frank Zappa always thought the Shags were better than the Beatles, so
Yeah.
you can always trust Frank Zappa.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
All right, Alan, what you got?
All right, I'll wrap up with a handful of just quick shout outs to bands we haven't gotten to yet, but things that I like. You mentioned Skosberg's production earlier. One that's definitely kind of second tier, but always been a personal favorite was the second Desultory album, Bitterness. I know most folks prefer the debut album, which is good too, but I always connected with this one really well.
I'm more of a
It's
Swallow
one-
the Snake guy.
Hey, that's the third one, and we don't talk about that one so much. But no, Bitterness, really good album. Also, yeah, one of the Necrolord cover arts that isn't a blue theme, that he uses this really interesting kind of reddish, almost orange hue for a lot of the main color scheme. Like that album quite a bit. Desultory, a good early Swedish death metal band, just not on that upper echelon. Marty, this would have fit in good with your black metal stack. Lord Belial with Enter the Moonlight Gate, similar. Now here we're back to the blue color scheme, but yeah, you could tell all these bands were using the same layout for the band photos and stuff that Dissection had used. Yeah, this band was very good at incorporating some things like some acoustic instrumentation, female vocals, using a little bit of it here and there to kind of help set themselves apart. Good album there. We have Mythotin. This band put out 3 albums really close together in the late 90s and then kind of disappeared, but they really helped set the stage for more the Viking metal kind of vibes, coming at it from a black metal direction. But yeah, I like their stuff. It's always very catchy. The songs are very fun to listen to. All 3 albums are really good. This is just a collection. They have all 3 albums crammed into just one normal CD case. So Mythotin, lots of good stuff. And the last one to shout out Swedish Death Doom, the style we didn't touch on too much tonight. But Rune Magic has been doing Death Doom in Sweden for quite a while. There's a break in the middle of their career. So they were active for a while, then went inactive, and then have reactivated in recent years. This album came out last year, Beyond the Cenotaph of Mankind, and is a really good take on the genre. So yes, if you dig Death Doom, it's been a pretty popular subgenre in recent years. Rune Magic's been doing it for a long time, and I feel like they still are getting overlooked in favor of some younger bands that have popped up more recently. So Rune Magic deserves a shout out here as well. And with that, I am done, and Marty, we'll let you wrap this on up.
All right, I'm going to end up in, I'm saying it wrong, probably Norrtälje. It's by Stockholm, I believe. Is that the Norrtälje? Is that
Norrtälje?
This is a band I had some stuff by early on and just blew it off. Recently, it clicked for me, and that's Monogarm. And obviously, they had plenty of albums, so the collector scum and me can. Basically, this is a long-running band. They've got there's 8 here, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 albums. Basically, it is Viking metal. Black metal is the foundation. A lot of folk elements. They have a dedicated fiddle player. Kind of popular. I like them. I don't know. It's something that didn't click for me back then. The earlier stuff is more black metal, but they got a little bit more melodic and a little bit more folky as they moved on. I don't know. It clicked with me, and I had to go and buy all their stuff. And another band that's related, also from Norrtälje, is Wormwood. The connection here is Tobias Ridsing is a live guitarist for Monogarm, but this is his band. He's got a new album that just came out, The Star. This has got their 3 albums leading up. It's Ghostlands, Netardavit, and Arkavit. Basically, again, black metal is the foundation, but as this has gone on, it's gotten a bit more depressing. little bit more rock influence, especially in the guitar work. There's elements of it that have like a Pink Floyd guitar solo type of vibe to it. I don't know. I dig it. It's a good downtrodden blackish metal. And that's it. There's other stuff, but we'll do it.
I mastered the last two Monogram vinyls.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah,
I enjoy them, especially the new one. My kid, the Monogram is the first grim vocal style that he's like, my kid's just getting into metal and branching off, and he really loves the new one. So
yeah. And it's actually Pelle Säter, the singer from Grand Design, who they record the albums at his studio, so he's mixed the albums.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. No, I dig them. I think they're a really good band, and Tobias, he's got a YouTube channel called The Rock Vlog, and that's kind of how I got reintroduced to Wormwood and Monogram, because he goes on these tours with them and vlogs, and you just kind of get to know the guys. You know, they're just kind of acting like we all are, silly, and doing metal guy stuff and taking in it. I'm like, wow, these guys are really good. End up kind of liking them, and then getting to like their music as well. So very cool, good stuff. YouTube, it works.
Yeah.
the new way of promotion, I guess. But
yeah, indeed. All right,
well, there
guys,
it is.
that is going to have to do it for part 2. We may have to regroup and do a part 3 one day. But Dan, Janne, thank you so much for joining us for this.
It was a
outing.
pleasure.
It's
Thank
been
you.
Tons of fun. Absolutely.
Um,
YouTubing interviews and stuff, but you're really you're excellent at it, and yeah, we'll have to talk about having you back on again sometime.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And definitely, if you are unfamiliar like myself, go check out the heaviest encyclopedia of Swedish hard rock and heavy metal ever. There's multiple volumes, and Dan will model them for us here. Hoist the tome high. Yes.
Actually, I'm currently working on a new book. It won't be an encyclopedia, but it's actually the history of Swedish hard rock. So I've interviewed a lot of the guys from November, Uppåt väggarna, and the Alexander Lucas, the early hard rock bands and bands from different eras, on how they were, where they got their influences, how they were received by the audience and by the media. Talked about the Swedish phenomenon of study circles and how we get paid from the government to rehearse, and try to dig into what makes Swedish bands sound the way we do. And I've interviewed a lot of bands, also bands that have kind of formed their own styles, so to speak, like Electric Voice with the funk vibe, and the some of the death and black metal bands, and the doomy stuff, and yeah. So hopefully we'll have it. I've been working on it for a few years now, but hopefully next year it'll be ready.
Awesome.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, if you'd like to come back on when it's ready to help promote and talk about it, we'd be glad to have you back.
We'd love to have you back for sure.
Help showcase it for you, sure.
So yeah, go check
and
out
Dan,
the Corroseum.
thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for coming back again too, Dan. Always great to chat with you too. And yes, sorry, Marty, what do you have going on at the Corroseum that you'd like to let folks know about? Oh,
Dan.
there was Dan froze up.
What?
No.
You said Marty.
No, dude. What do you have?
Sorry.
What do you have going
Sorry,
on
I
at the
interrupted
Corroseum?
Marty.
Anything coming up on the Corroseum?
What I have coming up on the Corroseum, I have gotten back to the mega project which I'm working on for 2 years now, and I'm finally getting back to finishing something absolutely ridiculously obscure project, which is going to be super fun to publish, and it's going to be super niche, and people are going to laugh at me. Why the hell did you spend this much time to write about this shit? But no, it is actually getting racked up, and it's going to be super fun to publish. So hopefully in the coming month it will finally be presented. Yeah, that is my very cryptic answer.
That's
What's
okay.
going
Yes.
on?
Once it goes public, if you'd like us to, help spread the word about it, by all means,
yeah,
just let us
we
know.
could do a sort of like a theme thing on that maybe later. Yeah.
Awesome.
We can try to work that out. Absolutely.
Well, great. Everybody go click on the Corroseum link in the description. Go check out the book, Janne's book, and also go check out Constancia and Overdrive. I'll have links to everything in the description, and hope you all enjoyed this first recorded episode of Heavy Metallurgy. We will be back next week, of course. And yeah, thanks for everybody. We appreciate you. Take care.
Yep.
You guys don't hang up. I'm just going to hit stop here and we'll chat for a minute.
We'll hit the
Cheers,
stop
everyone.
record
We'll see you
button.
next week.
End of episode.